Yeah, no, I totally understand. We felt rushed for time.
Yeah.
We'd asked for the use of the
Here.
conference room, yeah, several days ago, but it took them a while to get back to us. I think it'd be a perfect spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want any-
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for October 4th, 2022. As a general reminder, the microphones up here are directional, so please try to remember to have them pointed at your mouth when you speak. It makes it easier for the folks at home when they replay the video to hear what we're saying. Okay, we have approval of an amended agenda. To be added is 9E, uninterrupted power supply. Okay, we do have a closed session. City Attorney, do you have a citation for us?
Yes, ma'am. It's paragraph 8 of subsection 2.2-3711A.
I don't think
Consultation with
that's
City
on.
Attorney. What's that?
I don't think it's on. Is it?
Can you hear me?
Oh, that's
Okay.
better, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Please join us for a moment of silence, and Councilmember Amaya, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to public comment time. Has anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes.
Do we have a sheet? Okay. Thank you. Daryl, could you pass along the directional information to Hasid?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just speaking directly to the mic. Oh, okay. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, first we have Ms. Karen Miller. Ms. Miller, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. City Attorney will function as timekeeper. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Karen Miller. I live at 9224 Cynthia Street in Blooms Crossing. And first I want to say thank you for putting the retention ponds on your agenda. In our community, we have a number of people, myself included, because I live on Cynthia Street, we have issues with some mosquitoes that we feel is coming from the water in the retention ponds. So I'm hoping that when you get to that point, that the questions I have, you'll answer. And the questions I have are, with the retention ponds being inspected annually, have they ever come up with any issues that needed to be taken care of, such as possibly dredging them? Because there are trees growing in the middle of the retention ponds, and I was wondering if that's something that's normally supposed to happen. Since we do have issues with mosquitoes living close to the Lori Court and the Cynthia Street, I know there's others in our community, but living close to that one, I know there are mosquitoes. So what's going to be done to address the eggs that have already been laid? Because mosquitoes do die after 50 degrees, but they go into hibernation. So what would the schedule be for the mosquitoes to be taken care of for spraying, and going forward, how would the community be notified, and what would the schedule be moving forward? Since you're going to put them on the schedule, I'm hoping that you're going to take care of the ponds so that they don't wind up in this condition again moving forward. So I'm hoping that, you know, with that being on the schedule tonight, that those questions would possibly be answered in however you're going to handle the ponds and the schedule.
Sure,
So
sure.
thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it being on the schedule.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And my understanding is that most of those questions, or all of them, will be addressed. Is that correct, City Manager?
Yeah, I mean, the mosquitoes, I can answer that right now. A couple of our public works employees have finally gotten certifications from the state. We have to check and see if that will allow them to do pesticide treatment as well. I mean, I'm sorry, treatment for mosquitoes and those. But if not, we're working also on a contract with Orkin to take care of that regularly. But Calvin will be able to address the other questions as it comes to scheduling and everything else.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Joseph Miller?
Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate you on a nice building, very nice, and the work that you all do.
Mr. Miller, could you please approach the microphone a little bit more? Thank you.
How's that better?
Better, much better.
All right, my first question is in regarding maintenance for if it is an annual test, is the water being tested and where could it, and can the public actually see those results? We know that there are animals going to it, and not all of them that go there are leaving, shall I say. And then with the fowl coming in and landing there and using that facility, there are those droppings that could occur. So I want to make sure that's being addressed, and if we can view that. And then also, if there has been any surveys that identified or prioritized schedule retrofits on the ponds, and if the public are able to see that data that was collected.
Okay?
All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. City Manager, can you address the question about the water being tested in the pond?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question. I was trying to deal with technical difficulty. Can we
Okay.
ask these questions when it's the agenda item for the stormwater ponds?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Yes, Mr. Gardner.
My name is Kendall Gardner. I live at 114 Martin Drive. I've been up here several times, actually many times in the last 6 to 9 months, to bring issues to your attention. And I would like to confirm that the FOIA person that you have on staff is still Dean?
No, it's not.
It's not?
No, it's
Okay. It's Keith?
been in for a couple of years now.
Okay, at least I know who to get a hold of. Over and above that, I have received nothing back with the issues that I brought up. And I would just say this. At the beginning of this meeting, people got up and pledged it to the flag and justice for all. You can actually say that whenever people bring issues up here and you guys do not respond. You don't respond in the meeting, and from what I understand, that's normal. I don't know if it's because you don't want it to be televised or what, but you don't respond outside of the meeting either. So how can somebody get justice if you're not addressing the issues? Do they have to go to the election and deal with it that way? Hopefully I get an answer to this question. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. My understanding is that your issues have been addressed repeatedly.
No, they have not.
Yeah, they have been. Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to public hearings. Our first public hearing is on various waivers for the 8-acre Phase 2. I declare the public hearing open. Welcome, Mickey.
Good evening. Mayor, and can you hear me, or do I need to hold this?
You
up?
hold it closer.
Okay. Let me get my presentation first. Some people left. He told me I didn't do it up here, so we can go over that. Okay, so I'll hold up the microphone. Good evening, Mayor and
Empty seats, people.
council members. For the record, I am Michelle Berry, the Planning and Zoning Administrator for the city. The application you have before you is 6 zoning waivers and 2 public facility manual waivers for a particular site plan known as 8-acre Phase 2. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, this is not the right presentation.
You learn PowerPoint here. All right. So what are you trying to do?
It's not, there's stuff missing.
Is this not your presentation?
I don't know
Can you
why.
give me your thumb drive, please? Mickey, is that the correct one that is up on that screen?
Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
So give me that thumb drive, please, and I'll bring it up here.
Council chamber.
Okay, which one is it?
That one.
Here we go. Boom.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for those technical difficulties. So I just wanted to identify the location of the property for everybody. It is that vacant piece of property that is bounded in blue. You can see it fronts on Euclid Avenue, and it's about 700 feet south of the intersection of Manassas Drive and Euclid Avenue. You may be able to see some landmarks there. To the left of the property is the, well, we used to call it Park Tower, but now it's called our tenant, Manassas Park, and then City Center is in front of that. The Social Services Building is, that you can see the white roof of that. That is where the Social Service Building is, and it's directly to the left of this property here. And in fact, it's going to connect, there's going to be a roadway that will connect that area into Euclid Avenue, and I'll show you the site plan as we go through the waivers. Just from a zoning perspective, it is zoned MUD, which is mixed use downtown. You can see that the adjacent properties are mostly MUD. The property at the corner where they have the maximum auto body is zone B2. And everything to the south of that is Prince William County, and that's why there's no zoning district in that area. So if you may recall, there was an amendment to a purchase and sale agreement in 2019, and it was specifically for this component of the 8-acre property, which was sold, I believe, to the developer back in 2012. They had come to do an amendment to that for the second phase of what hasn't been constructed basically on that vacant piece of property. And this is what they propose as a concept plan for that, which is a approximately 4,500 square foot office building and 110 unit apartment building that would be 7 stories.
45,000 square feet office.
I'm sorry, is that 45,000, excuse me. Okay, so the reason why we're here and why we need your approval is because under a certain section of the zoning ordinance, certain development standards can be waived by Planning Commission recommendation and government body approval. Here is the list. This lot coverage, setbacks for non-residential zoning districts, heights, parking, buffers, landscaping. We do also have waivers for master sign plans and electronic message centers. And then if the residential component of the MUD district or PUD district exceeds 75%, you can get a waiver for that. So they have parking and lot coverage and landscaping waivers. So I just wanted to go through them one by one very quickly. The first one is a waiver of the lot coverage. They are asking for an increase. The current requirement is a maximum of 75% of the property. They are requesting a waiver to increase to 82%. Next, there are several parking requirement waivers that they have requested. The first is reducing the parking space width. The handicap spaces would be reduced to 8 feet, that typically are 9, and then the remaining spaces would be 8.5 feet. I would just note that even the handicap spaces at 8 feet are ADA compliant if there is a van loading space adjacent to them. But our requirement is 9 per the zoning ordinance. They're also seeking a reduction in the multifamily parking rate to 1.5 spaces. It currently now is 1.75 spaces per unit. The actual requirement is 1.75 spaces per unit plus 1 for every 10 units, but they're only seeking the request reduction to 1.5 spaces per unit. And then there is a request to reduce the bicycle parking. Without going through all the square footages, they would like to reduce it to 32 spaces. I just wanted to note that when it was brought to the Planning Commission, they did recommend an additional 16 spaces be added, so the total was recommended to be 48. The applicant did agree to that as part of the approval. The final zoning waivers are parking lot landscaping. Essentially, there's supposed to be a landscape island in the parking areas for every 10 parking spaces. Due to the configuration of the property, they've requested a waiver and have shown a few landscape islands in specific areas on the plan. And also, there's a 10-foot wide peripheral parking landscape buffer. They have reduced that to 5 feet and requesting a waiver for that. And then lastly, there are 2 public facility manual waivers. One, and these are for the private street that is going through the property, is to have that private street allow an excess of 700 vehicles per day. That's limited on private streets per the Public Facilities Manual. And then there's also a requirement to require sidewalks on both sides of the street. While the buildings have sidewalks, the street does not have any adjacent sidewalks to them. It's the next thing adjacent to the right-of-way are parking spaces, so they did need a waiver for that. But that doesn't mitigate the fact that they are providing pedestrian walkways through the site. So lastly, I'm going to show the site plan, and hopefully you can see this pretty well. So I tried to highlight some of the green areas so you can get a better idea of where everything is and identify the sidewalks around the building. Those are those white areas that you can see. The buildings, of course, are gray, and then you have the grass areas that are surrounding the building. And you can see that there are a few landscape islands. It doesn't meet our requirement. However, they do seem to be appropriately spaced to meet the parking that they wanted to achieve, which is 325 spaces. I also wanted to note that they are providing a turn-off lane into the property. Try to highlight that in gray there, so that will be a dedicated turning lane into the property. It's kind of hard to tell from this plan, so I wanted to highlight that. So those are the requested waivers, and if approved, this would be the result, the layout of the property. Staff is recommending approval, and And as I mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend approval on September 14th with the addition of 16 bicycle parking spaces, and staff does concur with that recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mickey, and thank you for the much improved map, much easier to see. I'm sure the folks at home will appreciate that also. Any comments or questions from the government? I think Steve has. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I guess we'll work this way down. Thank you, Mickey. I guess we'll start with the waiver number 20-2B, the sidewalks. On each of the streets, they're requesting no sidewalks on the side of the streets that's running, what, parallel to the building?
Yeah, the private street is here, it kind of, so they're proposing to subdivide the property. And you can see this dotted line, that's where the property line will be, but there's easement over this that will serve as the private road. And so there are no sidewalks adjacent to that street. That is just the waiver, but they are providing sidewalks and walkway areas, crosswalks, so you can physically get from Euclid to down here towards the social services building. So it's not as if there aren't any sidewalks, it's just that they're not right adjacent to the street, the curb, or similar in a typical street section that you have.
And that's just, I guess, to incorporate more parking, or?
Oh, well, I would defer to the applicant on that, but it does assume, based on the layout, that's the reason.
And then how many units is this building? 300?
The apartment building?
Apartment
It's
building.
110. It's really a sister building to the one that's already constructed. There's 110 because the entire building will be residential.
And then I guess the other waiver is they're requesting less parking spaces for that unit, for the apartment complex.
Correct. But it does meet the master plan as approved, did specify 325 spaces, and that's what they are providing.
But they're going down a ratio of 1.5.
Correct.
Yeah, so the current ratio is 1.75. They're requesting down to 1.5. And you remember our downtown discussions where we said residential, really when we were able to control a variable for Park 170, it's really more like 1.2, 1.25, the actual parking usage in our downtown apartments. So they're actually higher than that still.
Okay. And will these, I guess, parking spaces be, there was metered spaces as well? Who's that for?
Right, that.
Or timed spaces?
They are going to be designated spaces. That's really not, I think it's 3-hour parking as shown on the site plan. That's really not a part of this decision on the application, but
Yes, yes, sir, go ahead. Please identify yourself.
My name is Talal Hassan. I go by TJ, and I work with EMSI, and I'm a partner of the development of this project. I just want to point out that we have an office and an apartment building, and we are supposed to provide 325 parking per the approved master plan. And we all know that office building is a daily use versus apartment is a night use and weekend. So just as a support to the plan, we have plenty of parking. I don't think we're gonna have any problem future for parking for apartment or the office anyway. And phase 1 and phase 2 actually have also a shared parking agreement, both of them.
Yeah, just to add to that, when we were discussing the amendment with them a few years ago, as we were looking at examples of what could be in the office, and we looked at medical uses, we looked at satellites for colleges or other office uses, we wanted to be more than certain that they had enough parking. And to the applicant's point, the apartment parking lots are not going to be heavily used during the day. So to make sure we have an aggressive amount of office parking, some of the residential spaces are actually during the daytime from, I believe it's 8:30 to 4:30, if I'm not mistaken, are designated 3-hour spots, just to make sure that we have more than enough parking for the commercial uses as well.
Okay. I mean, I think the whole parking Thank you for the answer, by the way. I think the whole parking is going to be shifted because, after post-COVID, we have a lot of working from home, right? So you can see a lot of daytime residents parking there as well. And this we see across the board, but.
Yeah, it's not all the residential parking, it's just a piece of it. But again, I would invite you to check out like Artena now during the daytime. There's still a lot of parking available.
Okay.
Remember, we have a shared parking lot between Artena and our DSS office, and so there's always parking available.
We own several properties of office building in city of Manassas, also in Manassas Park. And yes, there's a shift that people work from home, and it's happening. In the past few months, we see a shift back. I think somehow that did not work 100%, and we see a demand for the office keep coming, especially in city of Manassas. Just as a piece of information, so.
Thank you, TJ. Do you have a follow-up? Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mickey, just to clarify, is there a sidewalk on the Euclid Avenue side of the building? Yeah.
Yes, you can see the 5-foot sidewalk here and up here. That's currently not there, so they will be providing that as part of the development.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Questions?
No question.
Do you?
Question as far as the reduction in the disabled parking spots from 9 to 8 feet. That's, again, to accommodate more parking spaces?
Again, I would defer to
Rationale
the, I believe that's true. I mean, that this site is a bit tight, and you can see that there is a lot of parking. I did look at, yes, so they did reduce those to 8 feet, but you can do that when you have a van.
A space.
Yeah, right, the unloading van space. That is still meets the ADA requirement. So it's not as if it's not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And yeah, I think they did have to reduce the space width to accommodate the 325 spaces.
And is there just one van space for disabled individuals?
No, I think there's several. When there's one here, one
People,
here.
But are they the van spaces, which are usually bigger?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
oh, well, they're on the plan. They're all 8 feet wide. Now, the actual, where the disembarkment area where people get on for a wheelchair, those certainly vary in width. I don't know,
Yeah,
TJ, do
well,
you
I
know
think
the
we-
exact
we-
dimensions?
Almost bigger than the parking space itself, you can see it. So it would allow for both sides to come in and come out and not really have a need for pushing itself. So there's on this side the apartment, and there's on the office also.
Right, so there's a van one here, there's a van one here. So I believe they can even do the 5 feet as a minimum for that, even it being ADA compliant.
Thank you, Vicky.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have another question. Are there any overhead power lines at this site, and will they be moved underground?
I don't believe we had an overhead power line on phase 1, and we undergrounded that a long time ago. I don't think there is any power line on this one. I haven't seen one. And if there is any, normally we underground them, yes. We don't keep them there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the amount that we're trying to, the 700 limit, where's that street on the map? Like,
Well, you see these arrows here, that's where the street is. It's a private street, and it's really a easement that's going to be on the property. So you'll be able to see it, it'll be asphalt and marked, but it really is just here. It's not identified as a public street because it isn't. It's
For maintenance purpose, but to be
But
honest
you're-
with you, it's
you're-
a public street for use.
but you're expecting it to be more use than before?
Well, right, I mean, it doesn't exist now, but and
I
it's
mean,
certainly
with
going to
the plan, 'cause
exceed the
you're moving it from
700.
700 to
Yes,
whatever amount.
it'll exceed that.
Because you
Mhm.
want that access to be more
Correct,
public. Okay.
absolutely. Mhm.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
One last question. Is there a way to get to Manassas Drive from that building? Or is it just in and out on Euclid?
Michelle, do you have the master plan for both phases?
To answer that question, yes. If you're on Manassas Drive, you hang, if you're coming from the western half of the city, you would turn right onto Bank Street, and you go straight, just like you're going to DSS,
Okay.
but instead of stopping at DSS, you go straight. Right now, you see a big hill there of dirt. That's going to be this development site. So you'll just drive straight now and access Euclid. And of course, if you're coming from the other side as well, you hang a left now on Bank Street.
So this drive aisle will connect, that's the connection here. So
Okay.
it'll go straight here, so you can go to Bank Street.
This is the DSS office for everyone's
Correct.
reference right over here. So when you pull onto Bank Street, you just keep driving like this now.
Okay, and my last question, so if you're coming in from Euclid, and say if you're going towards Liberia, will you be able to make a left into that street, or is it just? if
It's
you're-
right in, right out. You mean here? Yeah, you can't make a left, it's just right in, right, and I believe
Okay.
there's a median in the way, correct? I don't think you can do that.
Not sure. But it's designed to be right in, right out.
Correct.
I'm not sure there's a median or not.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it doesn't align with this intersection of, the name escapes me, of the court, that it's
Is it Costello? Not Costello.
La Paz? No, is that right? Okay. Yeah, it doesn't match up with that intersection.
Thank you.
One more question regarding that street that's going to have public access. Hopefully, we're not going to run with that problem that we have with Scott Drive after being used excessively, just in case we get to that point. Is that in the plans to have it be able to sustain the amount of traffic it's going to?
Well, it's a private street, and the owners are required to do proper maintenance on it. So,
Okay.
it will be constructed per our public facilities manual, but any kind of maintenance will be the responsibilities of the property owners.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any follow-up questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Mickey. Much appreciated. Is there any member of the public who would like to make public comment on this particular public hearing? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. The next public hearing is regarding addition of tourism zone to the city's development incentive program. I declare the public hearing open.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to clean that up a little bit. Okay. So nothing here to present for this agenda item, but just to give you some background on why we're doing this. So the tourism zone designation is permitted by the state to allow local governments to establish tourism zones. With that, you open up the opportunities to have legal incentives established by the state, but more importantly, for the purposes of what we're trying to do here, it enables us to apply for a tourism gap financing program for the future movie theater. Well, specifically now for Norton Scott, who's the developer of that building, to decrease their costs. There's a history of this. If you go down to Newport News or Oyster Point development, they had a movie theater development as well where they applied for this grant and they were successful. And essentially, the program reduces the cost to the developer by about 20%, with the state making investments in the development. So we want to attract state investments into our city, and that's the purpose of this. There's multiple steps you need to do to fill out the application. We fully expect to be submitting the application here within the next few months. And this is one of the first steps that you have to do before you can even apply, is to establish this tourism zone. So that's some of the background, and Dean and his team helped craft it. So if you have any questions about the legal text, please ask Dean for that. But if you want to have any questions about the program itself and the theater and everything else, please ask me those questions.
Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
So the tourism zone, is that just, it'll be for carved out spots in the city? It won't be like a blanket zone, correct?
We just had it to simplify it. We had it aligned with our city center redevelopment district. Yeah, so for whatever reason in the downtown we want to use it, we can take advantage of the tourism zone because they do have some B-pole incentives as well to help attract businesses, and we list out, you can see the businesses that are listed out there as well.
And just to kind of add to that, so we have 4 districts or zones within the city for redevelopment for these incentives. One of them was the downtown or the redevelopment district, city center redevelopment district. We just put it here. We have 4 other ones, so, or 3 other ones. So if you wanted to include it in those, we could just go ahead and amend it and change that. But it didn't really seem like those other ones were appropriate for it.
Could, if we had to, could we do it in the future, add them, or is it?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Is there any downside from adding them, other than
Well, so the downside is, there are tax incentives associated with this. So you're giving up, if there's already a desire to put something there, and you're putting this incentive in there, you're basically incentivizing a business to do what they would have otherwise done, and then we lose tax revenue for up to 10 years.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Follow up?
Nope.
No? Comments or questions? Okay.
Yeah, I have a, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess a follow-up on the tax exemption. So the incentive for this tourism zone is for businesses to come in, right? And then in this zone, they could apply for tax exemption for 10 years.
Well, it's more complicated than that, but yes, so if they have a tourism business,
Okay.
as defined in the ordinance, they meet that qualification, and they're within that particular district, and they rezone to the MUD district, which is the incentive zoning district, then they can enter into a performance agreement with the city where they detail exactly what they're committing to do. So there's various, there's matrix in there that gives them a certain number of points for each one of the things that they do, depending on how many employees they're going to have, how much increased gross receipts amount they bring in, how much increased assessment for the real estate, various metrics that we can use. We add those up, and that's how many years they get, and then we take that the number of years, and we apply a formula where they get the very first year, you take 80% of the increase, assessed value or gross receipts, and that's tax exempt, and it goes down by a pro rata amount for each year over the, say it's 5 years, it would go down by 20% each year, so that by the end of it, they're paying the full value. So, but it is somewhat complex, so it's not easily described here.
So that's what I'm saying. So for the first 10 years, what
Maximum.
type of revenue is the city seeing?
So the city would still get whatever it would have gotten. So it's only the increase, okay? And so they're still taxed on, the very first year, they're taxed on 20% of the increase and 100% of what they had before.
Right.
So the city's still seeing something from
So
this.
from the increase, from the base.
Right.
is the-
So we still get what we had before, plus a little bit of what the new business is bringing in. And it slowly goes up. So at the end of that, the incentive period, we're getting 100% of that increase and 100% of what was there before.
And this doesn't touch sales tax or meals taxes, which are going to be the biggest driver.
But that was my next
in
question, because
commercial.
it also mentions BPOD tax. So
Well, that's just gross receipts. It's not meals tax.
Not meals tax.
And it's not transient occupancy tax. So if we had a hotel,
Yeah.
there's difference.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm good for now.
Follow up? No? Okay. No? You good? Okay. Thank you, Laszlo. Is there any member of the public who would like to make public comment on this particular hearing? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. My understanding is that both of these items will be voted on at the October 18th meeting. Okay, moving on to information, tax software ERP.
Oops, wrong one.
Welcome, Chris.
And welcome, Mayor and members of the governing body. I just want to do a quick sound check. I also have Jonathan Grace. He's our he's our Barry Dunn consultant that's been along with us for this project. John, do I have you, and can you hear us?
Yes, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, okay, let's make sure everyone can hear him. All right, thank you. All right. So good evening for everybody. I am the Assistant City Manager, and I'll also be just doing kind of the informational upfront portion of this brief today. And then I have also our City Treasurer and City Commissioner of Revenue to also talk about their experiences, not only being a part of this project, but also their findings and their narrative too, and have them available for you all to provide some questions and answers. Just, you know, this is obviously something that we've done administratively in terms of managing the project, but we've included everybody throughout this entire process. So before we can really kind of understand what the whole process, it's why we did it in the first place, and a big part of that was fixing and possibly replacing our current system, specifically in this case regarding its tax and kind of associated with tax billing processing in and of itself. So that's heavily involved with the Treasurer and Commissioner of Revenue offices. Just to kind of re-scope it, not only for the members of the governing body, but also for the residents as well. We implemented our current system back in 2014, and it's basically just been a litany of issues pretty much the entire duration of having the software live with the city. It's unreliable in terms of just downtimes, its network connectivity. There's a lot of issues there. Just the continuous need for development enhancements, and even then, those enhancements not necessarily working out. It's just the way that the system is coded. If you can imagine, it's based off of COBOL type language, so we're talking very legacy platforms, and I don't think it's like a dead language for what you can think of it. A lot of reporting issues, so you're trying to pull data up out of the system just to do just general daily ad hoc operational reporting, as well as the more systemic type reports. I mean, we're in the middle of an audit right now, and it's something that it's like trying to pull teeth. Data errors, so it's a system that doesn't necessarily check and balance with data entry, so therefore that creates data issues. We're all human, we're just trying to get through our functions, and then if you slip on a missed key entry, and that just goes in the system. It says, yep, that's exactly right, and it's in the system. Workflow inefficiencies, if you think about just the ability to do multiple steps and clicks just to get something done, there's like, it's like they have 3 for every 1 added to it. And then just unanticipated cost increases. Every time we ask to do an enhancement or something, it just increases the cost, not only for that individual piece of work, but it adds to the overall cost for the annual maintenance as well. So just to kind of give this some further depth, and I have some numbers here, and total overall, and this is just for tax specific and billing specific issues, since we've had the system in place, there's been over 900 logged cases overall, 1,900 if you factor in the entire ERP. So that means that you're coming to work every single day as a member of the staff, and it's every other day that you're dealing with another keystone issue. And it might be something very small, or the fact that the entire system's down. You don't know which one it's going to be. That unreliability really not only impacts services, but it impacts everything related to just staff productivity and even morale, if you can think of it like that as well, if you had to work with something every day that you didn't know was going to work. So that just, the rundown there, you can see it with all the constant efforts. I don't have to kind of beat a dead horse here, but you can just see that it's not only from just subjective but objective loss of time and productivity and energy on staff. So just some added hidden costs. I like to attach a number to everything. And granted, this was a product that was developed for the city already at its, I guess, understanding that it was going to be cost effective. Like it was presenting us a really cheap kind of contract at the time. And so obviously the last few years you've had kind of differences in just general inflation and the cost for products. So it's not necessarily a true comparison of what we're looking at for brand new products today. But even then, you're looking at the actual cost of implementation and the actual purported cost for the annual maintenance contract and how much those increased just through all of the issue management that we talked about beforehand. So instead of being a $200,000, a little bit over cost to implement, it was, if I can find my numbers in here, excuse me if I'm getting lost on my own slide. It was actually, what is it?
So it's the 309 here
309,
plus
sorry,
the.
it's
yeah.
very blurry and sound on here. 309,000 from all the anticipated scope of work costs. So we had to have an additional 30 scopes of work in addition to the normal scope of work that was unanticipated because we had to build out more. So that was added to the actual cost of implementation. So we're adding that 309 to the total number of 203. So it was actually more than double the amount of the cost. And in addition to that, we were told that it was going to be all-inclusive $30,000 a year. And granted, that over years, they usually have a general increase in cost. It's roughly around kind of 2 to 2.5%. You can see that in that time frame, it's actually almost doubled in price too. So it's gone up just because of the way that it has had to have additional unanticipated work done to the system. And just so you know that tax-specific increase in the original implementation was $145,000. So of that 309 total increase in unanticipated costs, like half of that was just to get tax and tax billing corrected. So to kind of pull back on why we're here, let's talk about the actual project in and of itself. So this all started when we went out and released an RFP just to get ERP consulting services. We identified Barry Dunn through an actual RFP evaluation process, and they were brought in roughly around the end of the summer, roughly around the beginning of fall, to kick off the process. And their assignment was to provide pretty much a full assessment of all of our city business process, so start to finish all city processes for all departments. Define all of our system requirements for every single function that we do inside the system, develop an RFP that speaks to our needs, and then evaluate and assist the city in evaluating and negotiating the final contract for all the different technologies that we find through this. And then for that, for tax specifically, that's why we're here today. We're talking about just the tax-specific portion of this project. And as you were briefed the last time I was up here at the end of August, we had the issue with how the wholesale comprehensive RFP response was very limited. We basically just looked at the time and said, let's just look at our two tax responses for our two vendors here, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, the evaluation and understanding of what this means in terms of just the tax-specific portion of this. Just to kind of give you some milestones and kind of how much it involved pretty much everybody in the city that has some sort of relationship with our ERP. Fact-finding and staff, it was almost a week-long session, 19 sessions total. These are multi-hour type events, a bunch of different staff sitting in, and they're just giving their inputs from every single functional module. The benchmarking surveys, not only were we looking internally, we were looking externally at other jurisdictions, understanding what they utilize. It's always good to know what your city brethren are doing to process their needs. Then we said, okay, these are your business processes, but what are those kind of like line by line by line detailed nuances of every single functional aspect of your system? I even put there that created almost 4,000 total system functionalities that we recognized throughout this process. So that was a pretty in-depth exercise, if you can think of that. Reaching out for getting more requests of information from different vendors. Final delivery of our RFPs, and it's not just one, but it's 3 individual RFPs. And then doing all the rounds of scoring. And this is the product of the end of our finalized product of all the scoring that we've completed to date, just for the tax-specific check. And then, of course, when we're reaching out to the vendors, we're also, reaching out to other cities who utilize these vendors and getting their inputs as well. And that helped inform the audience, specifically our Treasurer and Commissioner of Revenue teams, of understanding that, what we evaluated, these are the pros and cons of what other cities are trying to work with these specific systems. I'm not going to go through full line item detail, but this just gives you per round the scoring evaluation of what we actually provided in the score. And if you have any questions, John Grace from Barry Dunn, they're the people that provided these scoring criteria as well as the actual weight of the scores themselves per functional phase. This is just what we utilized and discussed, and we did aggregate scoring. So it wasn't just everyone submitting their individual ones, and then it was just as a consensus, we came together with a number, and it was just one number that was put out there. So I'll just kind of go through these, but just to kind of provide the detailed summary at the bottom there, our 2 vendors that we had identified through the RFP response were Avenity and Tyler Technologies. Just kind of a broad overview. If you're not familiar, Tyler Technologies is essentially a wholesale provider of almost every single governmental software, I guess, system, platform that you could possibly think of. And Avenity is a local company in Fairfax that built a tax software tool just for Virginia Commissioners of Revenue and Treasurer's Office. So it's kind of the two different types of companies, but it was perfect because it gave us the boutique vendor and the national global vendor. And obviously in the first round of scoring, you can see that, the slight nuance and details between the two. That kind of further went into round two. So round one is essentially just the review of the technical proposal. We're getting all of the big, roughly about a couple hundred pages per response technical proposal, and that's what the round one scoring really goes into detail on. It's like your first impression. Round two essentially is more of the functional fit based off of demonstrations. So this is the product of those multi-day reviews and sit-downs with each individual vendor, going kind of detailed, scripted demonstration items that we had them show us, not what you think you're good at, but what we need you to show us that you're good at. Those are dictated scripts that we provided them in advance to be able to speak to on those. And you saw a little bit of the gap being created between one system versus the other there. Round three, kind of multi-phase. One is the cross-reference check, so it's what other cities are saying about the product, and then also the other part is the pricing, the cost summaries that come through with that as well. So you can see the two score costs there. Just a caveat between the scoring one, I know it's out of a possible 40, but Barry Dunn informed us that the way that they weight scoring is if you are the lowest price, you automatically get a perfect score. And it really comes into factor when you have like multiple vendors, but in this case we just had the two. So it's really just, is there a massive disparity between the two cost proposals, and that shows the score accordingly. So if you just want to look at the real quick kind of overview of the summary of the scoring costs, I'd like to kind of be transparent a little bit. It's a little small on the screen, so I apologize for that if you can't see it. But essentially it just gives you a detailed kind of summary of one-time costs for implementation and then multi-year effort type costs when it comes to just the annual maintenance service contract. And then you give you on a 5-year and a 10-year total. We always think of these systems like they're not just here for 1-year renewals. They're here because we want them for the next decade. So it's just giving you an idea of the total cost all in for, let's say, a 10-year kind of CIP type view. So kind of summarize that, and this includes in the single line there per vendor, not only just annual costs, but implementation costs in year one. And just to kind of provide that, what was Keystone, like what was the value prop for that back in the day, because I really like to provide at least as close as I can get to an apples to apples comparison. So implementation for what was spec'd at the time for tax and billing, because we're really just looking at tax billing here, and we're not looking at total system ERP. So Keystone, you almost have to cut that in half because it was only representative about just less than half of the total system for tax billing implementation, and then the recurring costs. And as you can see, it adds up. If we were to take that and establish a 10-year summary view, it was roughly going to be about just over $500,000, about $530,000. Because we're only year 8, so we had to extrapolate 2 extra years of what we've experienced with annual maintenance costs for that, and then additional unanticipated scope of work type costs, because we still see those today. And then you can compare that to what Avenity and Tyler are in terms of 2022 systems, and you're seeing that the value of Keystone is roughly kind of half the cost. So I added it in there. It's literally the big takeaway is you can see the difference. You're getting half the system, half the value for the cost of what an actual functional system. And we have 2 comparative systems that are pretty much almost on par with each other over a 10-year view. So that gives you like an understanding of, you should kind of understand that the value prop of Keystone probably wasn't equivalent to what it actually could do for the city. So there was a lot of like, I guess, false bill of goods in that sense. I can only try to provide so many different summary level views, but this is just to kind of bring it all together, round by round scoring, so you can just see all the numbers in one page. And then the overall composite that we saw had Avenity at just under 165 total, Tyler at 148, and how they scored per line there, and we understand the cost a little bit more. But I really wanted to get to this part which is the Q&A with our Commissioner of Revenue and our Treasurer, because I really feel like hearing from the people who utilize this system and have a real depth of knowledge of Keystone can probably clarify things a lot better and provide a little bit more information. So I'll stop there, and I wanted to focus more on Debbie and Patty.
Yeah, we'd very much like to hear both Patty and Debbie's assessment.
So if you guys want to come on up and you want to start? What's that? John's on standby for Q&A if you have questions for anything specific to the process, but this is specific to what we did internally as a staff. So the hope is if you don't have any questions for John, thanks for coming out, John, but I'll turn it over to all of you. So I think this is going to be better as kind of an organic Q&A type session, and then if you want to.
And you may want to hand them the mic too, so they're ready.
Yeah. You got the mic? All right.
Not really.
No?
We just like Divinity more than the other one. They're Virginia specific, so they will stay on top of the changes in Virginia law. It's not perfect. There's some things that we have with Keystone and had with Bright that we won't have with any other software company, and that's going to be a learning curve for us. But I have hopes that they seem like they are less pages. You can take one page for an account and look and see everything that you need to see without clicking 10 different spaces, thinking you're going to get to the bill part or the note part or anything like that.
When it comes to like pulling up an account, even when you go to pay online, say you're paying your water, it may say, okay, you have outstanding taxes here. It's going to pulled it all up. And we could put notes in there. You can see everything. You know, if I put a note in there, Debbie and them are going to be able to see it. Okay. Where now we can't even put notes in there. Mm-hmm. So it was, yeah, it was very nice.
Mm-hmm. So you're both in agreement?
It's not perfect, but
But
it's the
it
best
can
of
work,
the two.
yes.
Right. And preferable to Tyler?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Comments and questions? Yes, ma'am.
So how was the ease of use? Does it seem more intuitive? Does it seem, okay.
Less clicks.
Okay.
Where we're doing like, in order to change a real estate account with Keystone, you have to go through 22 screens to get to one deed to change it over. We had them do a shortcut for that, but Avinity has that all on one screen. You just go in, type in the new owner, and that's it.
Okay.
And like taking a payment, if you're paying your personal property, we go through 4 steps now. This is going to.
How many were there before?
With Keystone? No, that is with Keystone,
4?
but say, that is for one car.
Okay.
If you have another car, we have to do each one different. So if you come in and your bill has 5 cars on it, we have to go through each one.
So that's probably like what, maybe 10, 15 minutes per transaction?
Unless you happen to get a business like Atlas Plumbing that has 150 vehicles.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
And you have businesses come in and they have a right that want their I want to pay my taxes, I want my decals now.
Yeah.
We don't have enough staff to take somebody and sit there when you got lines and all
Right.
to do that.
Chris, you may know the answer to this question. Are these systems cloud-based, or would they be on the server in-house?
Both for Avinity and Tyler were SaaS, so they're all URL cloud-based systems. I don't know if they're true cloud, where in terms of they are completely off, but they are cloud hosted, at least, and they have managed services as well. So we will not have a network hosted solution here on premise with these 2 systems.
Okay.
Follow-up?
No, those are pretty much my questions.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation. Chris, a question for you. The training cost between the 2 vendors is significantly different. Avanti is $40,000. Tyler is $150,000, a little less than $150,000.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about the level of training our staff will receive with the Avanti. Will it be sufficient, given that, is Tyler that much more complex that it's $150,000 worth of
So
training
it's
as opposed, sound like we're being shortchanged some training.
You're correct for instance, and that was a huge disparity. When I looked at the cost estimate for implementation, that's where I tried to figure out why there was a disparity, and that's basically it. So the answer to the question in terms of that much of a disparity, Tyler is a very nuanced system. It requires a lot of tacit experience and understanding, really, and this is through not just my demonstrations and understanding of the system. This is through feedback we get from other jurisdictions as well. It takes a while to become a Tyler user, if you will, and that's not something we necessarily, I mean, that's in addition to all the other things that it can't necessarily do as a system. So it's not only do we have to have this like perfect roadmap to make sure we squeeze every ounce out of all of our training, but then if there is some sort of, I would say, not full understanding of the system, Tyler also has I would say, a limit where they're not going to do any more without having a cost estimate associated with it. So it's like you get your dedicated hours of training. I do find them to be more on the higher side in terms of costs for their, I guess, scoped hourly. So basically is when you get like oh, we're going to get training for this. They'll go, oh, that's 10 hours. It's going to be at X hour per person, and you're going to get a person that comes to give you the training. Tyler tends to be on the high side of that per hourly cost for additional training. So I would be I wouldn't necessarily look at that and saying Avinity is underserving, as maybe Tyler in this case is estimating to be overserving at the upfront and then nothing after the fact, if you could think about it, unless it's going to cost more. And the takeaway from Avinity was it is a very intuitive system. It's very user-friendly. So the difference I saw from my own professional experience was Tyler meets the needs in terms of functional requirements, but it's from the concept of what an engineer thinks you should be doing for your process, because that's the way it was built. For Avinity, they started their journey when they actually partnered with the City of Lexington's Commissioner of Revenue Department and built the software from a customer standpoint, which in this case is Commissioners of Revenue, from the ground up. And that's how they got their company up and running. So they basically utilized the City of Lexington as like an incubator to develop their product over time. So you can see it, it's night and day. So they were constantly, if you're doing one thing with a customer and they hit the nail on the head, it's all in one-stop shop with Avinity. For Tyler, you're constantly toggling back and forth between different modules in the system, losing what you were just on in order to go over here. So you almost need that disparity of time just to get better understanding of Tyler versus the other.
Follow up?
So we have sufficient money, the 40,000 is sufficient enough to train all of our staff in the city?
Oh, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they have,
okay.
I mean, like I said, they have this kind of implementation, and that's kind of it is. They're called their express implementation. So it's a 6-month implementation because it is off the shelf. It's ready to go because it's been scoped. They go, oh, we know how to service the city of Manassas Park. Here's our off-the-shelf solution for you. And because it's utilizing all the nomenclature that Commissioner of Revenue's used, it's all in one-stop shop, and it's not assuming that you know nothing about tax systems. It's basically saying, oh, this was your tax system, but it's better in here, so it's still intuitive enough that you can just go to it. It's like going between 2 different browsers. Like it makes sense if you know what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other comments or questions from this end? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. I know we're not going to vote on it tonight, but I think we are. I was wondering if there was a possibility, if we could get a demonstration.
So that's where I'm saying tonight was all about the actual just discussion of the process.
Right.
And just kind of where we're at, and then just kind of get a sentiment and feeling that this is the right path that we took as a staff. And then in the October 18th meeting, we're going to come back with the proposed staff recommended vendor and be able to do kind of a full actual approval, which in this case we can include a scripted demo if you want to just see the product in and of itself.
I'm really big on making this.
And that would be the expectation too. We wouldn't just have you approve something that you didn't get to see yourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up? Nope. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I guess to Debbie and Patricia, the notes you guys put in the system, they go, the notes are in real time that you can see them right away, both departments?
You'll see in the demonstration, this is perfect too. It's actually like a running chart on the right-hand panel of the screen.
Yeah.
So it's like as soon as you put it in, populates it, and if someone goes to that customer account, it's there. It's like a running receipt. if you will.
So there's no more back and forth. They can
There's
just
no
go-
back and forth,
yeah.
and it's an audit log
Yeah,
essentially. So
that's
it's showing who's done what per thing, and it's just constantly running. So it's very helpful.
Okay. Chris, I do have a question. In the Barry Dunn project memorandum, on the very last page, why do we only see a % of work owned by Tyler and we don't see anything by Avenity? How do you pronounce that? Avenity or?
Avenity.
Avenity. Why do we not see the % of work owned for both? I only see Tyler.
Is this in the brief side? I just want to make sure I'm referencing the same thing that you are.
It's the report from the
The project memorandum?
Ah, gotcha, yes. I don't have those offhand in my actual, I added those in the packet, but I don't have them in the brief accessible right now, just to be able to make sure.
It was in the upload.
Yeah, so I provided supporting memorandum type descriptions on
Yes,
there. I just don't
yes.
have it at my hand here for in terms of, so you're referencing the,
Very back page.
yes.
Flip it over.
Flip it over. Yeah. No.
Flip that
very,
over.
very, very back page.
There you go.
Uh-huh. Okay, so this is, and John, if you're on, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if from what I remember this, the percentage of work effort owned, so different companies factor in services into different categories. This was one that Tyler itemized out, whereas Avenity included all inclusive within their professional services. So there is a difference between kind of how Tyler itemizes out, how they're going to basically shift the work expectation between, and a little bit more of a back and forth. Avenity in their professional services, that 62K line, it's all inclusive. So they provide a more substantive amount of implementation service. So it was almost like an NA for that category. And John, if you're on and you understood the question, was that accurate?
Yes, I'm actually looking at the proposal summary memo now, and I think there was two parts to that, Chris. One, that information may have not been provided, but to your point as well, it may not have been applicable from Affinity. So that's why it wasn't showing up.
Okay.
But within the demonstration process, it's not just a tax demonstration, it's also a discussion from a project management standpoint, all the different nuances, and nothing that we discussed directly within Avenity, or Tyler for that matter, about what was expected in terms of how they're going to help us convert data, how they're going to help us migrate systems, how they're going. So we kind of have a full understanding of what the expectation is going to be in terms of how we're going to migrate solutions. So there's not like one company's going to stand back and cross their arms while we're trying to get everything up and running. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Debbie. We appreciate all the work that went into the project selection. Thank you. Okay, and moving on to 6A. 6A is a proclamation celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and we also have two certificates of appreciation. The first certificate is for the Salvadoran American Council, COSALVA, for their outstanding contribution and volunteerism in the Manassas Park Latino Festival. Our second certificate is going to be presented to Mr. Rafael Lezo of El Imparcial newspaper for his outstanding contribution and excellence in the service of Latino journalism. We have some guests with us this evening. When I read your name, if you're comfortable to do so, please stand and be recognized. We have representatives from the Salvadoran American Council, Ms. Lizette Cully, President of COSALVO. Councilmember Yessi Amaya, who is Secretary of COSALVA.
I'll stand up.
Ms. Liz Barahona, Vice Secretary of COSALVA.
I don't think she's here. She's not here.
Okay. Mr. Edwin Guerrero, Vice Treasurer of COSALVA. Ms. Marilyn Caballero, Board Member of COSALVA. Is she here this evening? Okay. Ms. Ruth Enrique, Board Member of COSALVA. And Mr. Rafael Lezo from El Imparcial newspaper. Welcome, everyone. So now let's go to the proclamation. Whereas during National Hispanic Heritage Month, the City of Manassas Park recognizes and celebrates the rich cultural traditions and honor the significant achievements of our Hispanic and Latino American communities. And whereas Hispanics and Latino Americans are the largest ethnic minority group in the country and the fastest growing minority in the Commonwealth and make valuable contributions to the Commonwealth and to the City of Manassas Park in business, government, education, the sciences, arts, and faith. And whereas the observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 through the legislative encouragement of Congressman Esteban Torres of California to cover the period at which it is celebrated today, September 15th through October 15th. And whereas the day of September 15th is significant because it is the anniversary of independence for Latin American countries Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th and September 18th, respectively. Whereas on this Hispanic Heritage Month, the governing body of the City of Manassas Park would like to recognize the Salvadoran American Council, COSALVA, for their outstanding contribution and volunteerism in the Manassas Park Latino Festival. Whereas the governing body of the City of Manassas Park would also like to recognize Rafael Lezo of El Imparcial newspaper for his outstanding contribution and excellence in service in Latino journalism. Therefore, be it proclaimed by the City of Manassas Park that on this day we recognize September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in recognition of the indelible footprints of Hispanic culture in our daily lives. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We have, Councilmember Omaya has the certificate, or the certificates of appreciation, and this is the proclamation. To whom would you like me to present this proclamation?
To the President.
President of Consultant.
Good thing we have a newspaper going.
Let me get out of the way.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. Moving on to 7A. 7A is consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of September 13th and September 20th. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 8A. 8A is to amend city code regarding the HB 632 exhaust and muffler law, the public hearing having been previously held on September 20th. Does staff have any final comments on this?
I don't have anything additional.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the governing body before we take a vote?
Looks good.
Okay. The recommended staff motion is that the governing body approve an ordinance to amend City Code 15-5 to require a muffler and exhaust system conforming to Virginia Code 46.2-1047 and 46.2-1049 on every vehicle operating within the city as presented.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to 9A. This is cooperative procurement regarding best management practices and pond maintenance.
Calvin.
Welcome, Calvin.
Members of council, residents, staff, and guests, I'm Calvin O'Dell, the Director of Community Development. This is rather a simple agenda item, and I'm going to start out by addressing the questions that were brought forth in the citizens' time earlier first. Sorry, is that better?
No.
There we go, green light.
A little closer to your.
Okay, so, yes, this was a rather simple agenda item. It was not going to get into the detail to address the questions that were posed during citizen time earlier, so I'll start there. We do, as a city, have as a requirement through DEQ to inspect all of our BMPs in the city annually, all the city-owned BMPs. All of the non-city-owned BMPs have to be inspected in a cycle. I believe it's 3 years. But there are a substantial number of city-owned BMPs in the city. There's over 20 ponds that represent a portion of those BMPs in the city, and they are inspected every year, and those inspection reports are provided to DEQ with our annual report, which was just certified and issued last Friday. The inspection does not require the level of detailed topographical surveying, although we are getting hints that that is coming. DEQ does want us to have topographical survey of all of our ponds, and we know that's in the pipeline. We've discussed that with the governing body, so we've been gearing up for that. We just issued a new on-call, new RFP for on-call engineers. So when we get those various on-call engineers selected and on-call, we can then issue permits to them, see where we can get the best pricing for starting to actually do the topographical work on those ponds, because a lot of the ponds that we took over, not so much in Bloom's Crossing, but in the Connor Center and older parts of the city, we don't even have detailed plans for. So we'll be asking on-call engineers for the city to not only draw those out as they exist, but also to sort of guide us in how we actually restore them to capacity. When you're analyzing a pond upon visual inspection, it's really hard to say exactly if it's performing the way it's intended. I think the question you're asking is how sedimentated is the pond? Is it still capable of performing its intended function? That's really a hard judgment call. We kind of depend on observations over time to determine that. You know, if we could go out there and we had a 5-year storm and it's topping the main riser structure, it's not functioning right. That riser structure was almost certainly designed for the 10 or the 25-year storm, so we know that there's capacity issues with the pond. If we go out there and we've recently had a 10 to 25-year storm event, and we know that we were told by the residents that it was topping the emergency spillway, which is designed for the 100-year storm, we probably have capacity issues. I would say we aren't aware of any of those types of issues with our ponds. We do know that probably some of them are sedimentated. We have cleaned several out over my tenure here in the city, but to go in and spend an exorbitant amount of money to remove mere inches of sediment is not cost effective. So when we get the actual topographical data, we'll determine probably minor corrections that could be made to ponds so that they don't have any ponding areas, pooling areas, but you can't really afford to set up a program where you regularly dredge out the pond, and then there's also a restabilization period that is sort of counter to the concept of a BMP. We want the bottom of that BMP to be vegetated so that we're not adding any sediment to the storm, to the creeks downstream. When it comes to a mowing schedule, actual maintenance for the city is usually people think of that as mowing. Inside of the pond, that's a really big challenge. These structures are designed to take concentrated flow from developed areas, put it into a small package and let it stand. So a storm as little as a ½ inch to an inch of rain can cause substantial standing water in a stormwater pond. That makes it a very difficult venture to get into a soaking wet pond and mow. The governing body was nice enough to approve a green climber machine so that staff can more safely address these issues. We've had things stuck in ponds numerous times, tried to pull them out with tractors and trucks and track machines. This little machine has really bought us a lot of ability to go out there and operate safely with staff. It's actually sort of, think of it as a remote control bush hog. It can go in and take large vegetation, can't take anything over 4 inches, but it can even do some pretty good damage to 2 and 3 inch saplings. So that machine has really increased our ability to get in there, do some maintenance on some overgrown ponds. But still we run into those ponds where there's large vegetation already in place that needs to be removed. That takes special consideration. We've had several in the past couple years that we've brought before the governing body because their cost exceeded the city manager's spending authority to have a company come in and remove all the large vegetation and completely rehab and recondition those ponds. So it's a big challenge. We're trying to get there. We also have staffing issues right now. I'm happy to announce that this week we're finally back up to full staffing levels in our stormwater and site division. But the governing body is familiar with the fact that our site and storm division also does site inspections. So for a while we were operating with a 2-person stormwater division that was also responsible for doing all the site inspections for all the ongoing infrastructure for all the development and construction within the city. That posed some real challenges. We did probably get a little behind on our mowing schedule, but that is, that's to be expected when you're trying to manage a small staff. So we are trying to play catch up there. Our goal is to get all of our ponds and the surrounding areas outside the ponds, the drainage areas that we have city responsibility for, to the point where they can literally just be tackled with a mower and a weed eater. We're not there yet. We still have a lot of ponds and drainage areas around the city that require extensive work with going in with chainsaws, going in with bush hogs, things like that. The green climber has been a real big help with getting there. But it is a challenge, and mowing, we do not hold ponds to the same standard that we would hold like a backyard or a front yard to. That vegetation is there for a reason. It's there to stabilize the bottom of the pond. That pond is going to be saturated the majority of the rainy season, maybe a couple weeks in the summer or a couple of weeks in the middle of the winter. It might dry out enough to walk on, but most of the time it is going to be a challenge to mow because of the nature of what it is. That vegetation prevents erosion of the bottom of the pond, which would then contribute more sediment downstream. And it also helps with evaporation. You're never going to have a perfectly smooth bottom of a pond. You're always going to have small areas of ponding water, and those are always going to be a potential breeding ground for mosquitoes. So a stand of vegetation actually helps that evaporate off faster and probably helps us with that pest problem. The pest problem, we did have a contract for many years with Orkin. Unfortunately, their treatment, their larvicidal treatment, is really just a catch basin treatment where you're dealing with a small potential for a small amount of standing water. It would be really ill-advised to go out and throw 50 to 60 larvicidal discs in a large treatment pond. that probably is not good for the environment, probably poses a real risk to the streams downstream of that pond. Larvicidal treatment is a challenge in big bodies of water. So the larvicidal portion of our Orkin program was really targeted at the catch basins, the small curb inlet structures, drop inlet structures that you see around the city. The treatment plan for the ponds was an on-call perimeter spraying, which, as you know, only treats the live adult bugs. It doesn't actually treat the larva, so it probably gives you 3 to 4 days of improvement, and then you start to see the bugs come back. So we are looking into that. Our efforts along that front have been to try to be able to, when we get spot complaints, as the city manager mentioned earlier, you do have to have an applicator's license in the state of Virginia to apply pesticides. We were actually working with the state for the past 2 years. 3 years ago, we started working with outside entities trying to get our guys the required training. We now have 2 staff members that can actually apply pesticides, and we have 1 staff member that is taking that can apply herbicides, and we have 1 staff member that's taking that extra step to get the pesticide certification. So we will have staff that will be able to help us quicker respond. We won't have to wait for our contract pest control person to come out. We should be able to go out and address the problem more immediately with staff. But that is beyond just pest treatment, larvicide and live bugs, the flying adults, spray treatment for those. Our main goal is to get these structures intact, get them draining down so that there's not a lot of ponding water, so that we're minimizing the opportunity for breeding and for larvae to actually come full stage and hatch out and then become mosquitoes. That's what the agenda item is about tonight. We actually are short-staffed, as we've already spoken about. We can't tackle some of these bigger pond renovations, remediations, whatever you want to call them. When there's a certain amount of overgrowth in a pond, it kind of exceeds our ability as staff, or requires us to pull stormwater or street staff, water and sewer staff to accompany the stormwater staff. We're pulling them away from their jobs, often for 3, 4, 5 days at a time, just to go in and remove vegetation, run it through a chipper, try to get everything taken care of. So we do like to, when we can, use contract services to achieve these goals. Moeller Incorporated answered a procurement call from Henrico County. Henrico County schools needed BMP maintenance. Moeller answered that. Their procurement process was very similar to ours. They put it out on eVirginia. They probably advertised it on their website, maybe a local paper. Moeller Incorporated was their chosen vendor. They did have a cooperative procurement clause in that contract, and they have agreed to pass on their prices to us. So there is no actual price associated with the agenda item tonight. It's simply to get an agreement in place with Moeller, so that as we encounter these ponds that are a little bit beyond Public Works capability to go in and remove the vegetation, restore them, try to get them draining down again, that we can go ahead and hopefully be within Laszlo's purview to sign most of these, but I'm sure we'll have some ponds where we'll be standing before the governing body for substantial amounts of money to get, multiple ponds done at one time. But that is the agenda item before you tonight. To allow us to enter into agreement with Moeller Incorporated for BMP renovation, improvement, remediation. But that's why I said I wasn't going to cover all the questions. I know everybody was excited. There was a big BMP agenda item, but it's really just to get a base agreement in place.
So let's go to our folks who came this evening, our residents. Does anyone want to approach the microphone and ask questions? Yes, sir, please.
Joseph Miller, resident. I appreciate all you're doing. The report that you submitted at the end of the year that you said you passed, is that open for the public to see and view?
It's an annual stormwater program report that we send to DEQ, Virginia DEQ. It is all public information, yes.
So where could I see that, and so that everybody else that wanted to view it could see it?
Request to Keith, our FOIA officer, for a copy of the report.
We'll just upload it on our website. So, yeah.
Oh, it's already on the city website? Okay. Yeah, we're required to post all of the reports on the website every year. I don't know if the actual stormwater report contains the individual inspections, but the individual inspections are referenced in the report, and they do have to be provided to DEQ.
Okay. Second question is, in those, you don't have to go into detail, but just yes or no. In those reports, is the quality of the water tested? Because we have terrible snakes and rodents going into the ponds that are filled with water and then coming on the people's property.
Okay, we
I
have
just
to,
want to know if
yeah,
that
we have to
water is
remember that
tested
this
for
is
E. coli or
stormwater.
anything.
The purpose of a BMP is to remove certain things that are identified by the state and by the federal government as pollutants of concern.
And the pollutants will be in the water.
The pollutants of concern in this case, when we're talking about Virginia, this area of Virginia, we're talking about nitrogen and phosphorus. Now, there is a push. There are some bodies of water that are becoming where we're becoming required to cooperate in programs that will then remove things that are results of pet waste. But right now, the primary nutrients of concern in the Virginia Stormwater Program for this area are nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids. Not E. coli. It depends on the body of water that it's going to. But as of right now, none of those ponds were designed to address E. coli. Okay. And the city has to take steps as a whole to start limiting E. coli from getting into our bodies of water in general. And that program is going to continue to get boosted as Bull Run is identified for higher and higher levels of E. coli. But the ponds as were designed in Bloom's Crossing and the Connors Center, E. coli was not a consideration when those ponds were designed. So the BMPs themselves are not designed to remove that. That's a more holistic approach that the city must take with that's why every time we're running a booth at a city event, we're handing out flyers about picking up your dog poop because that's the #1 way we can really battle it. We're not going to be able to control wild animals defecating and urinating in public, but we can certainly have people pick up the waste of their domestic animals instead of leaving it in their yards or on the side of the, in the public rights of way.
Right, but you do agree that if there was E. coli present in the pond, it would be a concern of yours?
I think there's probably always going to be E. coli in a standing body of water where there's any wildlife nearby.
At a significant level, we could say then?
At a significant, well, I'm not a scientist. I don't know what a significant level of E. coli. You're not going to want to drink any pond water, storm water.
I never said drink.
Yeah. So.
All right, let's move on to another topic. You made the survey of the ponds in the area, and obviously, and you're going to make the recommendations for the renovations and repairs that you need, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you have a list of the ponds in the area? You said some needed more significant work than others, to give to the mayor and the council that these are the ones we have to address, X amount, say 50, and our top priorities, the ones of main concern that we have to do first, are 1, 2, and 3 located at these sites. Do you have a list of the ponds you wish to address first?
Are we talking about survey work, like actual reconstruction of the pond?
Repairs that you want to do to the ponds that you're going to suggest outside contractors and vendors to do?
Oh, so
The
no,
priority list.
the majority of the work listed in this agreement is use of track machines, grading work, sediment removal.
That I understand.
Yes, we would have to have topographical surveys to support paying for work like that. The work that they'll be doing probably first will be areas where there's massive amounts of vegetation that we feel that's, possibly the roots of the vegetation or something are causing drainage issues with the structure. We do know that we have ponds. We don't have very many wet ponds in the city, not designed wet. They're all designed to drain down over a certain period of time after a storm event. If we go out there and a pond is consistently not draining down, then we know that something is blocking at least the low flow orifice, and we need to get out there, clear that out, drain the pond down, remove all the vegetation, try to unblock that orifice and get that pond functioning again as a dry pond. That's the basic type of work that we foresee releasing here within the next few months from this contract would be addressing those ponds where water is standing and we can't figure out why the water is standing, trying to get this company to come in and help us remove the massive vegetation, clean sediment immediately away from the low flow orifice, and try to get that water flowing through the riser again to the outfall.
Correct, and you said there are certain ponds that have increased vegetation that you'll be taking care
Yes.
of first, which goes back to my question, is there a list of which ponds you'll be addressing first?
I don't know if we have a itemized list, a priority list like that. We have all the notes from our inspections. We have an internal, I'm sure that my supervisor, the Stormwater Division, has an idea of the ponds. I can't say yes or no whether there is a running list of the priority work that we would be divvying out, no.
All right, I find that hard to believe that you don't know which ones need the most care, just in a general aspect. You're just gonna go to the town and the council and say, in the city, I need $80,000 to start to do this work. And I'm not gonna tell you where I'm gonna start, I'm not gonna tell you how much I'm doing, I just need this much. Instead of saying, I need $80,000.
That's not what's being proposed tonight. What's being proposed is us to have the contract by which we can do the work you're describing.
Right.
So at that point, when they come back to me, they'll come back with what are the priorities, what are the actual task orders that I can either sign off on, or that we need to come back with the governing body. And that's the time we would have that discussion that you're talking about.
Perfect, because that I would like to know, because we have standing bodies of water for 2 years now.
No, 4 years.
4 years,
no,
and I have
4 years.
pictures today where it's over 4 feet. And I don't have a problem with that not going down. I have a problem with the snakes and that, and I know you have no control of it, coming on to the resident's property. And thank goodness, I don't live there right next to it, but I wouldn't want your house to be there. I don't want my house, but I feel terrible for the people that have that. So that's how come I was looking to see what properties would be addressed, so that you can have the most informed information to have those situations, hopefully you already had it, addressed first. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask questions or make comments? Okay, let's go on to the governing body. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
So Calvin, I have a couple of questions. I know that we got the ponds, but the BMPs, does that also include like that stream that's there on Manassas Drive? Or is it just?
A BMP usually, until after 2014, when they released all the proprietary options, you were really limited to a few proprietary options and the more common ones that are in the actual, the more standard, the ponds, the wet swales, the dry swales. Nowadays, with all the proprietary options, a BMP can be anything from a vortex filter to a carbon filter system, a combination thereof. You're very familiar with the ones that you put trees into, the bay savers and such. But all sorts of methods have been derived and they're sold as proprietary products. Those are actually best management practice BMPs, as long as they submit their specification data and get approved by the state of Virginia. But yes, a BMP can be anything. The BMPs that we're specifically talking about, the ones that are in the city's inventory, both public and private, are those that were designed with site developments for the purposes of meeting stormwater requirements.
Okay.
So there are several, you're mentioning like a linear stream. I know that in Bloom's Crossing there are several dry swales through Bloom's Crossing. I'm not familiar with any wet or dry swales anywhere else in the city, but we have a myriad of different BMPs at Costello Park after the renovations there. You know, we have, so BMPs come in all shapes and sizes. Ponds are just one of them. And ponds themselves come in all shapes and sizes. Dry ponds, wet ponds, extended detention facilities, facilities that are meant to percolate and actually drain water out through the bottom of the pond. So BMPs are numerous. They're all sorts and types out there. I can certainly share the list of BMPs in the city and we can go over it.
But this would cover any of those type of body, I don't know if they're bodies of water, but that would cover any of those type
Don't
of
know
bodies?
how much of the list of the work in Mueller's list. It's a lot of machinery and labor hours.
That's what I
When
noticed.
it comes to the proprietary B&Ps that have specific filtration media and canister setups, we try not to take those over and leave those as private. We make a lot of steps because those are very expensive to maintain, and I think for those of you that have been on the body long enough, remember we were actually proposing one of those on Martin as a part of our long-term reduction plan, TMDL reduction plan, and we decided to do everything we could not to move forward with that because that's where you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every few years just to go in and clean those out and replace the filter media. So we try to stay away from those very complicated proprietary BMPs, especially when they require media replacement and things like that. And we tend to like ponds, dry swales, wet swales, rain gardens, things like that are a little bit easier to take care of. Is what the city really tries to keep in our inventory.
Okay.
We see a complicated proprietary BMP. We're asking the owner to keep control of that.
Right, so this will just cover the things that we have control, that we have ownership over?
Yes, we don't, I think we do have a couple proprietary, like at the fire department, but those are vortex, where you just suck them out with a Vactor. They don't have any complicated entry requirements where we go in and replace media or anything like that. But yeah, we try to, this will tackle all of the questions that have been asked here tonight about pond maintenance for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Comment? Yes, yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea when the topographical studies will begin?
So the actual non-VDOT on-call agreement questions ended on Friday. An addenda went out today, and I believe we had another missed question. We'll be reissuing an addenda tomorrow. So we'll start evaluating as soon as those proposals come in, and when we get on-call engineers on staff, a fermet for this type of survey work will be one of the first fermets we issue. Because we really want to get, we've been incorporating the BMPs into our GIS, which was the first and foremost DEQ requirement. They haven't put an exact deadline on us to have all of our BMPs surveyed, but we have had some concerns, especially with the aging facilities in Connor, that we're going to wind up in there doing massive reconstruction, and we want to get a jump on it. So.
Okay, thanks.
First of all, Calvin, thank you for sharing these comments tonight. I had some questions about the pest extermination. I think the city manager made reference to the contract that we're in the process of trying to bring forth to help deal with the mosquito issue. Would this pest exterminator also be able to deal with the snake issue? I've received several emails of families and homes in and around retention ponds that have had just a plethora. I mean, I've seen pictures of literally 5 or 6 snakes in their yard. So will they be able to address not only the mosquito issue, which is a main problem, but also the snake issue as well?
So what we're talking about with pest control is not turning one of our staff into a pest control professional. You cannot spray larvicide, you can't apply larvicide, you can't apply insect killer of any kind without a license. We were in that predicament. The reason a lot of our stormwater ponds, especially the fences areas, got so overgrown was because of the requirement to, we used to be able to use Roundup. We used to be able to use herbicide to care for our pond areas so we could keep those vines and weeds from growing up through the fence. When that went away, our maintenance responsibility around those fenced-in ponds grew exponentially. All of a sudden, it would take 3 to 4 days of a crew out there with weed eaters just to try to get the stuff out from under the fence and get the vines cleared off the fence. So we initially started looking into an applicator on staff for the herbicide portion of it. But you can take that extra step and you can actually get a license to apply pesticides. Yes. Now, I don't think pesticides do anything for snakes or rodents, and there's all sorts of issues if you go out there leaving actual rodent killer or, anything that's targeted to kill full-grown species like that. There's all sorts of considerations. People all over the city have pets.
Yes.
And we don't want to get into the business of putting harmful things out there that someone's pet could get into. For the most part, I would say tossing some larvicidal discs in a standing stormwater pond, we're probably not jeopardizing anybody's pet's life by taking an approach like that. But I would be very hesitant to say anything about our ability to control snakes or rats or anything.
And we probably don't have the ability, but I thought the city manager
We
talked
can,
about
yeah,
Orchid
we can talk with Orkin and see what, so from my understanding is they will evaluate and provide recommendations. So but to Calvin's point, we want to be careful about what we're doing as a city and our liability for harming pets. But I think we want to take the best advice from a professional pest control company and see what we can do there. So we'll engage with them and we'll see what our options are.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the snakes, because like I said, I saw several pictures, and I could share them with your office.
Oh, I've seen them too, yeah. We got
okay.
them. Yeah, we got them sent to us, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay. Thank you. We can do
Follow-up?
that.
No.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Councilmember Javed?
Thank you, Calvin. So this service is not currently budgeted, but there's a line item already in the budget for it?
So the work under this would come out of either stormwater contract services or stormwater RUMs.
Okay.
In the case of just removing vegetation, trying to take a one-time shot, at some excavation around a low-flow orifice or something to quickly remedy a pond that's not draining down, probably definitely best out of stormwater contract services, which is an operating line. Okay. When it comes to full-scale reconditioning of a pond, actually removing sediment from the full storage area of the pond, restabilizing it, that's going to arise to the cost of a full-on capital project, and we would probably target the stormwater RUMs line for that.
So the task orders that come in, there's no recurring cost, because if we're hiring them, don't they do quarterly maintenance, or how often would they be looking at it?
I'm sure that we could set something up as long as it fit within this price list. We could set them up to do work at whatever frequency we wanted to. It's hard to say, exactly how long it would take before their services would be needed. You don't want to throw good money after bad. Like I said, if we can get most of our ponds to the point that they can be mowed, most of the area around the pond and the edges of the pond, and then use the green climber to get the actual bottom of the pond, 2, 3, 4 times a year, we shouldn't have these issues to need molar services to go in and help us remove vegetation. And if we can get these ponds to drain down, then staff can go into them and keep the low flow orifices flowing, hopefully. It's amazing sometimes how fast they sedimentate, and that low flow orifice, if it's not a snorkel structure, it'll just disappear. And you're in there with shovels removing muck just trying to find it. But it can be a hairy situation. I remember when the one stopped up when they were building Cougar Elementary, and it was just so much sediment from the job site that the low flow orifice just disappeared, and we had to completely drain the pond down, or the contractor did, for days before we could even venture in there with full-on waders wading through the mud and pulling each other out with sticks. So it's the bottom of a stormwater pond can be an interesting place to work. The goal is to keep them draining down on a regular basis so that we don't have to spend the kind of money we'll have to spend with Moeller on some of these ponds, not to have Moeller do all of our work for us.
Yeah, once we get to the ability where we could just mow them without this extensive work, we will likely, they'll be bringing back contracted support for mowing because of the short staffing issues we've been talking about, right? We can get to them probably 2 times a year, right, per our staffing. So if we want to increase that, we're going to come back likely with a contract extension to do a little bit more mowing as well.
And then since we're writing the contract for Henrico County, is it mimicking the same scope of work? We will basically have the same scope of work that's in their contract as well?
No, so it's really a price list that we're utilizing here.
I see.
They have price. If you look at their response, they provided costs for different types of track machines, different types of labor, different types of services, and it's that cost list that we'll be utilizing, not a specific scope of work for any of their ponds that they've specified.
I see. So like, for instance, like filling up animal holes, stuff like that, it would just be priced differently for us?
That would be priced the same as it's priced in their scope in that contract. Their prices they've passed on to us. That's the.
Right.
Well, each task order will be prepared using that list. And so we would get a task order that would have a total amount based upon that list.
Okay, I think, yeah, I mean, what's the requirement for DEQ to maintain, how often do we have to maintain these ponds?
We have to inspect them once a year. We're looking for anything that would keep the pond from functioning. So like if there is vegetation, massive amounts of vegetation growing around the low flow orifice, and we can see that and we know that that's why a pond's not draining down, then the inspection report would say we need to remove this vegetation, this pond's not functioning correctly. But you know, it's really the ponds that we're talking about that I've heard comments about here tonight, they've had standing water in them for a long time. It's hard to say exactly. Could just be sediment topping the low flow orifice that's not allowing them to drain down. Could be vegetation and roots have cracked the actual pipe that leads to the low flow orifice. It's really hard to say, and we won't know until we drain the pond down, get in there, dig out the low flow orifice, do a camera inspection of the pipe, put everything back together, and then it should be functioning properly.
Thank you.
Any other more questions? Any other questions? Thank you, Calvin. And thank you, folks, very much for coming out, for your comments. Thank you for your questions. Much appreciated.
Rare.
Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with Mueller Incorporated for stormwater maintenance services pursuant to the cooperative procurement provision of the Virginia Public Procurement Act as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 9B, revision of solid waste ordinance.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. So in front of you, you have a revised ordinance that the city attorney revised in better language for city staff. Thank you, Dean, for that help. I'm going to read it out loud what the changes are, and then I'll give a description for why we're doing this. So the new language is that the amount billed to the city by the contractor of such collection and removal is by contract or the cost of city staff labor and city equipment used for such collection and removal. So what that's saying is that if we're picking up the trash bags, we can charge the resident at cost, whether we're contracting that service out or whether Public Works is going out to collect the trash. So why are we doing this? So tomorrow, we're starting the policy of not collecting loose trash bags. Excuse me, ma'am? Can we please take that outside? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So tomorrow, we're starting the policy of no longer collecting loose trash bags. So we've directed Patriot to stop collecting loose bags, with exceptions, of course, of yard waste.
Can you define loose bags, just so the public?
Yeah, so trash bags that are not secured in containers. That's the goal. So you have to put your trash bags in containers. Yard waste is still an exception. You can leave your yard waste in bags, and we're going to be coming back within the next couple months here about defining what those bags will be, just to simplify the process for Patriot with their collection. So in order to do this, there's kind of two things that we do, right? So, or three things. One, direct the contractor not to pick up the loose trash bags that are not secured in bins. We've done that. Step two, we'll actually cite people, ticket them for violating the law that says you have to put the bag in the container. Our code enforcement team has now been equipped with the technology to actually issue citations. We're not going to be actually issuing fines this month, just more warning tickets, letting people know, hey, new policy, we're warning you, come November, you can get fined if you don't do this, right? But we want to start letting people know that this is coming. Number three, we'll be collecting bags that are not in bins, that are not going to be picked up by Patriot. We'll go around and pick them up, either Public Works or a combination of Public Works and contracted support. And then we bill the resident for that work, so that the city's not taking on that burden. And then, so we bill them. If they don't pay it, then the lien is placed on their property for that work. So they are going to be paying something right now if they're not complying with the law. It's not the citation, but it's the work of collecting the bags. With the current ordinance, though, we have to have an adopted schedule of fee for us to charge back, but that's not reasonable because we don't know how much it's going to cost each time to contract out. Prices are constantly in flux, or how many labor hours it would be from public works and equipment. It's just going to depend on how much is out there. So we want a much more flexible ordinance that allows us to bill at cost, either the contracted cost or the actual cost for public works to go out and pick that up. So we need this approved tonight if we're to move forward with this policy tomorrow, to be able to pick up the trash over the next few days that's left out, not secured in bins, and to invoice people for not complying with the law, letting them know via citation that citations are coming. So if you keep doing this in November, you're going to have a fine as well associated along with, that's separate. That's essentially a fine for violating the law, and then billed for the actual work of us having to pick up, because it's not fair for those who are complying with the law, for the city, for those residents to subsidize those who aren't complying with the law and not be billed for the actual work. So that's what this ordinance tonight accomplishes, and we request that for us to be able to move forward with this policy tomorrow, we really need to have this.
I'd like to point out the date is wrong on the top of that ordinance, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. What ballpark would the fine be if you're going out and picking up 2 trash bags?
Well, it's not a fine.
Oh,
It's
I'm sorry,
yeah, it's the bill for the work.
What would the bill look like? Like today?
Any rough estimate, Laura? You, per home? If you want to come up here, Laura, to this
Yeah,
one.
say they left out 2 trash bags
Yeah.
tomorrow, and we were billing. What would that look like?
If Public Works is picking it up, it would be likely just an hour of, well, it's actually be 2 hours, because the employee's going to get, it's likely going to be after hours if they do it. So, because when Public Works closes at 3:30, Patriot is often still out there, sometimes till 6. So if staff has to go out after hours to pick up a couple trash bags, then they will have to hold that until the next day, and then they'll take it to the transfer station. So you figure 2 hours there. I'm using FEMA rates for vehicle rates. So 717, 1734, 154, and then for 2 trash bags, probably about 170 would be the bill, 170, 175 for having to, and again, that's 2 hours of employee time, 2 hours of vehicle time, and then the fee at the transfer station is based in weight. So 0 to 300 pounds is $15 flat fee.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
how it would work.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in the event that if they have items out there that Patriot would need to go pick up, like bulk, or for example, an eviction load, this is where it gets sticky trying to determine a set fee. An eviction load being somebody moves out and leaves most of the contents of their home on the sidewalk. That can be anywhere from $900 to $3,500, depending on the quantity. So that's why we can't specify a fee. You need to go by the contract price.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's a lot of money.
That's great.
Comments or questions?
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Maybe a cap.
So how are you going to regulate the townhouse, like the ones that have the centralized location? You don't know which house they belong to.
Stay tuned on that one. But the trash bags will be dealt with there. But no, we're still working on that in terms of, because you're talking about their centralized collection. You're not talking about dumpsters, though, right?
No, I'm not talking about dumpsters. I'm
Correct.
talking about the
Yeah,
centralized,
and
they
there's a
put it
pr-
all in one area.
Correct. There's a problem with that in terms of liens, right? But stay tuned on that one. But the trash bags, that it will be addressed is all I will say.
All right, because the only thing I would say that is that it won't be fair to define a single-family home and not a townhouse when we're incorporating this whole fee structure citywide. So either we have to figure out the townhouse situation before we figure out the whole city situation.
And that would be your preference if you want us to delay this. But again, Patriot's going to be upset here. All these companies that saw our ordinance and made the bids, they assumed that we would be moving towards the rest of how Northern Virginia operates, that you have to put bags in bins. So I would advise against deferring, because it's a small amount of cases that you're talking about versus a much larger cases of townhomes and single-family homes where you can identify where the actual receptacles are. It's a very small area that you don't have that we're still going to figure out how we're going to address that issue.
And we have enough staff right now to circle the whole city, pick up trash bags.
That's why we're asking for the contracted support, so that we can actually pay a contractor to do the work if we don't have enough staff.
Which, so basically, we took away a service from what Patriot's already been doing, and then we're going to pay extra for contracted services, and then put a fine on top of that when people are not paying it.
Well, another way to phrase it is we had a problem of loose trash bags on the street not being put in containers, leaving the trash out. We adopted a policy that says you can't do that anymore. All the vendors who actually bid for trash collection came at lower prices because they assumed that we would actually do that. So that's another way to rephrase what you said.
But come Wednesday, I mean, trash bags are picked up on Wednesday morning. Inside, outside, wherever it is, it's being picked up.
Trash bags, no. Not under the new policy.
Not anymore. I'm saying it was used to being picked up. We took away that service. So
For
now
a reason, though.
Huh?
For a reason.
Right, because we're scared of rodents and pests going into trash overnight while they're out there. But, I mean, I said my comments last meeting, but.
Well, I have a question about a cap. I mean, $3,000, $900 for an apartment that's set outside, or just the fact that it's unlimited. If 2 bags was $175, if you have 4 bags, you're figuring that's doubled. It just seems like an excessive amount. Can we cap the maximum amount that we would charge the removal of bags, or does it have to be a per bag fee?
It'd be, I guess, your discretion if you want to cap it, but we want to do at cost. We'll try to be as efficient as possible with our public works crew, and not bill more than what we have to have. But I can't promise what a vendor is going to charge the city, and at that point, it's the city eating the cost. If you're talking about cap, they're not going to cap what they're charging us. So if we're capping what we're charging the resident, then we have to pay that as a city, and that'd be a new expenditure that I have to bring back to you all.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm willing to try it and see what kind of concerns we get from the citizenry. But,
The fee is ridiculous. $175.
But I do think the idea of people putting their trash in the bag container is a good one.
Yes.
It's
So I
how
support that.
it's the policies of other cities as well.
Well,
So,
we have to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I support that, but I'm just
Yeah.
concerned about the fee cap. But we'll wait and see how that goes.
Laura
Yeah,
has a question.
the fee is a concern, but if I'm understanding this correctly, we want it to function more or less like an enterprise fund where the service has to pay for itself.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, we'd have to raise the trash bill for all of our residents to be able to start paying for additional costs if we're going to eat the cost of collecting the trash. Yeah.
Laura has a
Yes,
question.
yes, ma'am.
All right, so a couple things. Regarding the large things of trash, like an eviction, what I've seen in the past 2 years, I've only come across that twice, including one blocking the whole entire sidewalk for a number of days. And then last Christmas, where I got 3 phone calls. Because right before Christmas, the people put it out on the sidewalk and actually where you park. That latter one, the city was actually able to get a hold of the real estate agent and have them taking care of it. But either way, that's a really big eyesore on the city. The second one is regarding, I know we're talking just about trash bags right now, and that is we've been telling folks for more than a month now, you gotta put it in the trash can. But does this also cover when folks leave mattresses out over the week? We've seen a number of that, mattresses left over the weekend.
Toilets.
Yes, furniture, just all sorts of eyesores. Is that included in this structure as well?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it is because the ordinance, from my understanding, says you have to put them in a bag and then put them in the container. So it's a 2-step process. Trash. So you can't leave things out. You can leave things out like mattresses and other things if
Right,
you
you could
schedule
call-
the bulk
right.
exactly pickup. But if you're not picking it up, then we have to collect it. We're going to charge you for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I need to know.
Councilmember Amaya, did you have a question?
No, I'm okay.
Any other further questions or comments? No. Okay. Thank you, Laszlo. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve an ordinance to amend subsection 13-23B of the city code to clarify that the cost of collection and removal following noncompliance with container and/or placement requirements is to be either the amount billed to the city by a contractor if such collection and removal is by contract, or the cost of city staff labor and city equipment used for such collection and removal as presented.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oppose? One no.
One opposition, abstain. Okay, motion passes, thank you. Okay, moving on to 9C,
No, she
Polk
then
Park
said
Mill
abstain.
and Overlay Project.
Gotcha.
Welcome, Jay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. Okay, I tend to talk with my hands, so I'm going to try not to throw this across the room. That would not be
Throw it
good.
that way.
Yeah, that's right. I'll go to my left. Yeah. Next to Patty, though. I won't hit her. So before you this evening is a staff recommendation requesting your approval to move forward with the Polk Park Mill and Overlay Project. So this was originally approved as part of the FY23 CIP budget with the intent to use ARPA funding to address this project. Basically, in terms of the scope of work for the project, the existing hoops would be removed and replaced with brand new Hercules diamond durable hoops, commercial grade. After that, they would come in, the contractor would mill the existing asphalt to about a depth of 4 inches, refill with base course and then surface course asphalt to refill that space. Following about a 30-day cure period, we would then be able to add 1 coat of resurfacer and then 2 coats of color concentrate. And then finally, the court lines would be painted. Due to the time of year, the temperature that we're facing as we move forward, that will need to be kind of punted to the spring, the paint work. However, the contractor will be able to put down temporary court lines so as to not prevent access to the court once the pavement work is completed. So essentially, staff reached out to 3 separate vendors or contractors to request proposals. Thus far, we've only received 1 completed proposal, and that was from Finley Asphalt and Concrete. So given their experience in the field, they have a very robust infrastructure in place, very diverse portfolio, and not to mention the great work they did on the Signal Hill Trail project that we recently did in 2021. Staff does recommend moving forward with them in the amount of $47,400. Just kind of wanted to point out a couple of points of clarification on this. The hoops themselves that I referenced in the recommendation, we would procure as far as the department internally and then provide them to the contractor so that they can install them. That's approximately $5,200. That price kind of fluctuates based on a number of factors, but at the time of putting this recommendation together, it was just a little over $5,200. That is not included in the $47,400 price. That would be above that price point. And then secondly, I wanted to mention that we also intend on replacing the playground structure, the borders, and the safety surfacing over at Polk Park as well in the spring once all of the pavement work is completed. Just want to make sure that we have adequate funding to ensure that the pavement work gets done before we commit to that. However, pricing has been secured for that, and as it stands now, we would easily be able to incorporate that playground structure as part of this total line, which is $65,000.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
Sure.
Comments or questions?
Really
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
question. How are we going to be able to prevent, we have a 30-day cure rate. So how are we going to prevent the children and adults, going over there and playing ball while it's curing?
So yeah, we'll definitely have to kind of cordon off that section and, kind of do the best we can to prevent, kind of hope for some, probably put good signage up to explain, like, please, so that we don't mess it up, because it's certainly for their benefit. So the company will secure that area, and we'll have signage up. It's pretty common at these playgrounds and schools for them to do, so I know when I spoke to the vendor, he hasn't had major issues with that in the past. So the hope is that we should be okay there.
Okay. And we're going to do this before the winter sets, or we're going to do this in the spring?
So the goal is to do it before the winter sets. He said as long as I can have kind of everything, a commitment to him and all of the, you know, the legal language in place for them to sign by mid-month, they're good to go. Once we get past that, it would have to get punted to the spring.
Okay.
But the hope is to do the asphalt work now because of such the drastic, price fluctuations, and right now we know what the price is. It could certainly be different, in March or April.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any follow-up questions? Nope. Okay, thank you, Jay. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with Finley Asphalt and Concrete for the Polk Park Mill and Overlay Project for an amount not to exceed $47,400 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to ordinance for personal property tax extension.
Good evening once again. Just please note that we did hand out updated versions as well from the city attorney, who just wanted to add clarity from when the previous action was done and removing all references to real estate taxes, because all we're talking about tonight is the personal property taxes. So as a reminder, real estate tax bills we pushed back from December 5th to January, the first week of January to be due. Elections are this first week, or November 8th. My request is that we push this personal property taxes to December. We still don't have the technology for the kiosk system at upstairs so that people can take a number, get texted when they're ready. So we're going to have to do a lot of line management here at the new building. My preference is to not be doing that during election season, so we have kind of clean dividing line. We do elections so people can come into City Hall during early voting and on election day, and then we push this back to later. My preference would be that first week of December, so I can build my customer service division team up to help with to help the treasurer out with any line management control that we need upstairs and downstairs, because if we get overwhelmed with people, we're going to have to do some downstairs lines as well. So I want to space that out. Usually people start showing up a couple weeks before the due date. My hope is by pushing it back another month, we'll have a little bit more, kind of a slower trickle throughout that period and not be so overwhelmed the week of the due date. But if we are, again, we'll have that team in place to help with line management. As part of this, too, there was concerns about when we were going to be able to issue out the bills. We are ready now. At this point, we were concerned about when we were going to get the stickers, the decal stickers themselves. They were supposed to be delayed. We ended up getting them last week, but all this was kind of going on through our thought process where we're going to mail out bills right now, but people may not have a full 30 days if we do right now. And we get complaints sometimes that, hey, I didn't have a full 30 days to pay this. By pushing it back, we're giving them more than enough time to come in and pay. We keep telling residents, we recommend you still come in, as soon as you get the bill, and try to pay it before that first week in November if you can. But we know that won't happen. But this will hopefully kind of stagger this out a little bit more so that our new building is not overwhelmed until we can get our kiosk system in place where people can get numbers and have a little bit more organization there, and give us time to build up our customer service team as
So
well.
it's primarily line management is the issue?
There was other logistical issues, but I think Patty and Debbie knocked those out last week, but that was kind of into my thought process when I was putting this together. But the third element was really the line management control as well.
Okay, because just reading this, one might think, well, one's on the third floor, the other's on the first floor, and residents might wonder.
Yeah, there's going to be people waiting in line on the first floor for, if the lines are as long as they used to be.
Okay.
We're not going to be able to support that on the third floor. So we're going to have a system in place to have people queuing also on the first floor as well, receiving a number and going up. So there'll be a whole process to this. We'll be snaking lines upstairs as well, but we're going to support Patty and her team and Debbie with our customer service team that we're recruiting right now.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And that's worst case if lines get out of control. I hope not. I hope people come in and trickle through the next 2 months as we're extending this even further. Hopefully, a lot of people will pay it once they get it over the next week or so, and start paying it slowly through October, November, so we're not overwhelmed that last week of November, first week of December. But we have to always plan for the worst case.
So what is the impact, what will be the impact upon our revenue now that we're pushing it back another month?
Yeah, you're talking about a loss roughly of about $3 to $4 million, but I would be more concerned if we didn't have the ARPA money. We keep, we have the $20 million. We've only spent around $2 million of that money, so we have that in our bank account. So our bank account is going to be strengthened. It's really real estate. I would hesitate to push back real estate even further because that's going to be the majority of our revenues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do we know when we're going to get the take a number thing?
Don, did we sign that yet?
Yeah, we're working on it.
Okay.
Meeting with them on getting
What's the date?
project started.
Okay.
We're
so it's
sometime in
probably-
2023.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how about the processing time, I guess, between December and January for the personal and the real estate? Is it going to be any burden on the staff?
Oh, you're talking about having it 1 month
Processed.
apart versus 2 months apart. Yeah.
You said yes? Oh. So, I mean, the real estate tax, we already pushed to January,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was, and then we're pushing the personal in December.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I was just,
You look puzzled.
yeah, I was just wondering because, I mean, the limited staff they have right now, and they're going to be abundant with basically both of them in the 4-week period, personal and real estate tax. And that's going to be, what's that?
We're each losing an employee. I have one having surgery November and December.
All right, well, there you go. You're losing, it works out. But processing those basically within a 4-week time frame, I don't know. I see a human error. I see lagging of financial, getting the data into the finance department. I mean, it's going to be everything basically pushed back. Even when we start talking budget season at that time, you won't have numbers at that time.
No, we're not doing, we're doing budget amendments in December. We're not doing FY24 budgeting during that time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You've spoken with the staff and they've agreed with this timeline, correct?
Which staff?
With the Commissioner of Revenue. They're okay, well, you guys are okay with this. You're not okay with this timeline?
Commissioner's not, Patty. We talked about it before. We had the whether we were going to get the stickers or not. So all I was hearing the last few weeks is, we're not going to get bills out on time. We're not going to get the stickers. I had to think, well, what's the solution? It's pushing it back.
Okay.
They got those issues resolved, right? But I still have the concerns about City Hall itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, if you guys don't want to do this, that's
No,
fine.
I'm just,
It's
like-
just, I'm giving you guys a warning. It may be a little bit of a mess here, that last week of October and first week of November. Yeah.
Questions, comments?
I
Yes.
have 2 questions then. What, do we have someone downstairs?
We don't, not yet. We're interviewing right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Debbie, you're a no. Patty, you're a,
The bills are gonna go out next week.
okay.
As soon as you all decide here tonight, all I have to do is email and say, this is the due date, and they're gonna go out. You know, it's gonna be busy, it's gonna be crazy, but like he said, you're gonna have some that's gonna pay, you're gonna have some that's not. But she's going to be short-staffed, and I may be, so either way we go, it's gonna, you know.
Yeah. The decision points are impact them, short-staffed, or residents not having full time to pay.
My main concern is that we've got to give these people
A time.
the time. I can't mail them out today and say, okay, go do this stuff.
Right. Okay.
Somebody's gonna be getting calls. Now, Debbie is the one that has she's really gonna be short-staffed.
And I also need some guidance on the decals. Dean?
Yeah, but you needed those guidance, but you needed that guidance even with the change in November.
Right.
Yeah, so that has nothing to do with what's being discussed tonight. What you came to talk to me about yesterday was true whether we're doing it November 5th or December 5th.
Right.
Why can't it just be November 14th? I mean, it's just a 1 week thing.
That's fine as well. I'm just proposing something here. We can modify, but what she's not talking about that. What she's talking about is what we're charging for decals. It's a totally separate issue.
Yeah, we can talk about that some other time.
No, but it,
Okay.
Either way we go, like, you know, her and him are saying, you're going to have those that come in, and then you're going to have those that need that extra time.
Councilmember Hampton, did you have a question?
I have a question for the treasurer. I have a, so you said the bills will go out next week. So will that go out like the 11th or 12th?
I think it's going out this Friday, right?
This,
It should go out this Friday, the bills, or?
They will be mailing them out as soon as I send him the
Yeah.
date they'll decide on.
Okay.
The printer's ready to run them.
The issue is the post office.
Yeah, I know.
We get complaints all the time, and I believe it, because it happens to me with my mail, that you don't get it always on time.
Right,
Someone
and
can
you-
get it
and-
2 weeks after, and then they have 2 weeks to pay this thing.
right, and you're looking at Monday being a holiday.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you know, it can't be November 7th.
Yeah, we get that complaint even when we get bills out on time. We get that complaint that they did not get their bill on time.
So you're probably looking at things hitting anywhere from the 12th through the 26th.
Yeah.
And then you have Thanksgiving, the 24th and 25th. Let's just throw the 23rd in there. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
No.
So what's the proposed date?
I'm saying December 5th. I have no problem. I believe we need to push it back. If you guys want to kind of get the baby down the middle, I'm fine with that too. Just need more time for line management.
Please give the customers time, because he gets calls, I get
Yeah.
calls, I'm sure you all get calls. As a matter of fact, I can show you my cell phone, I wasn't even here today, I was at a doctor's appointment, and I got 2 texts, Patty, when are the tax bills coming out? And it's like, we're coming.
Yeah. And our residents were already frustrated because of the DMV system that was when we first opened City Hall, and they were coming in here to change their registration. We told them we can't help them right now. There was a lot of frustration already with our residents, and I just don't want to add another one. I want to give them plenty of time to pay their bills.
And is the credit card debit machine working now upstairs?
I think there's times left, but we're switching to, we are using our old one.
Okay.
It's on its last little legs, but we are going to the new one very soon. And I think it's going to be up and running, I'm hoping, the end of November.
We're supposed to have a kiosk too, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we're trying to set up a kiosk for payment as well.
Okay.
Or with credit cards, you'll go to the kiosk.
Okay. Because I know some people were like, I don't even have a check, and the card was down. One person came with cash or something for the water bill, so.
Well, we
Yeah.
do, believe it or not, we do still do a lot of cash.
Yeah, I heard. But okay, so let's, I'm okay with the 5th then, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have another question for the treasurer.
Yeah.
And I know none of us like working on a Saturday, but would it be helpful to have a half a day on a Saturday available for people to walk in and pay?
I've already spoke with the city manager about that, and I will not make my staff, but I do have some that have volunteered it, you know,
Okay.
if that's what we come to.
The library's open that day too, so it's not like City Hall's dead or anything.
Right, so that might, and thank those staff for willing to give up their Saturday. That might be another way to kind of, right, reduce the frustration.
Yeah. And because we're going to have, so our customer service team, you guys approved the full-time, but we also have part-time, so we'll look about having part-time people work at the lobby on that Saturday as well to help out Patty and her team with customer service. Or upstairs if they need help upstairs, yeah.
Okay. You have another question?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess it'll be unrelated. We'll finish this up and then we'll follow up.
Okay, we're good to go here. Staff recommendation is that the governing body approve an ordinance to provide for a one-time extension of the due date for tangible personal property taxes to December 5th, 2022, as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to uninterrupted power supply install. Welcome, Dawn.
Mayor and governing body, I'm presenting tonight. So we had our APC uninterrupted power source that was at the old city hall moved to the new city hall because it was not a bad unit. But once we got it here, the electricians looked at it and said, I'm not going to install it. I'm afraid to, because of warranty. And the other company that had maintenance on it said, you need to get APC. So I contacted APC, and we had some issues with some of the way it was going to be routed. We finally got that taken care of, and here tonight is the proposal to take and install it into our system. Here, do maintenance on it, do batteries, and do a year maintenance for the unit itself. What it does is the power comes in, goes to the APC, and from the APC, it goes out and then connects to the server room and all the data closet where all the switches are. So when the generator, I know people say, well, we have a generator, but that generator takes a minute or two to kick on, or if it takes longer, or a power surge, as soon as that power goes down, servers and switches go down and don't always come back up as cleanly as we'd like them to. So this would be to help keep that from happening or with that.
Comment?
So,
I'm
comments?
sorry, are you done?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I didn't
Sorry.
want to interrupt
No,
you.
no, no, no,
You're
I'm done.
Okay. Comments or questions? Okay, that was very straightforward.
Try to be.
Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with CompuDynamics LLC in an amount not to exceed $28,683.18 for installation and maintenance of the APC Symetra system as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. Okay. We're on our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to come to the microphone and make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we
Excuse
will
me.
move on.
Ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, go right ahead.
All right, just a couple announcements. November 3rd, 1 PM, correct, is the Veterans Day flag raising ceremony. And so there are a number of VSOs that we invited. So I said November 3rd, right?
You said third?
Third. Third. And so just letting the folks here know and the folks at home, any veterans, family of veterans, and anybody that likes to thank veterans, please come on out. Halloween,
Houses of Lights.
yes, that is now open. Any resident that's interested, you can get an application downstairs at Parks and Recreation or the website, and it'll be open to the 14th. It's free of charge. And it's a cousin of the Winter Lights Extravaganza. And the deciding home, the winning home, will be a guest of honor at the trunk or treat.
Okay, super, thank you. Okay. Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. So tonight we have two reports, the first one from the police and then second one from Parks and Rec and Library. Before that, though, I just wanted to congratulate Ryan for today trying his first cases for code enforcement cases in court and being successful. So we actually, so we actually got some positive rulings from the judge. Thank you, Ryan. So there were some cases that were resolved in our favor today. I think only one was deferred for December, but I'm hoping we'll get that one ruled in our favor as well and get the judge to force compliance on these code enforcement issues. So just want to start with that. Thank you, Ryan, again, and I will turn it over to Chief Lugo for the police update.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. Tonight I'll be providing the annual report for the police department. I'd like to start with some highlights in the last quarter of FY22. We were ranked the 8th safest city in Virginia. We kind of went from 9 to 8, so that was a good sign. We did do a checkpoint this year. We haven't done one since 2019 before COVID. We did several field sobriety tests, issued about 35 summons. We actually located somebody who was wanted from a neighboring jurisdiction and were able to serve a warrant. We actually sent one of our captains to the FBI National Academy, Captain Winston. He graduated back in June. He finished with a 4.0 GPA, which is all executive leadership and college courses you have to take, fitness, and also, you know, talking to other leaders in the nation and across the world that are leaders of military or police. We did start our photo enforcement safety cameras for the red light in this quarter, which was around April. You've seen the numbers in the past of what we're seeing on that. We did see an uptick in Part 1 crimes, which rapes, robberies, aggravated assault, burglaries, larceny of autos, and regular larcenies. In our investigation unit, we did see an increase in special victim investigations, weapon violations, and fraud cases. Our officers this year responded to 170 medical calls, which was a little bit less than last year, which was 172. And our busiest times at our Emergency Communications Center were from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the busiest times and also peak call times. On our Part 1 crimes comparison from FY21 to 22, as you see, there's larcenies were up, burglaries, larceny of autos, aggravated assault. Robberies, we did see a couple, not a significant jump, but a couple there, and rapes were up by 2 compared to last year.
Hey, Chief, what's the threshold for the larceny? Is it 100 or more?
For what type of larceny? There's different types.
Oh, yeah, I guess there's.
Yeah. I don't have them separated by amounts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This comparison here shows from FY21 to 22 for the operations, which is our patrol units. As you can see, we had 23,814 incident calls. Compared to last year, we were at 24,000. The numbers for the TDOs and ECOs were kind of, I swapped them, but it should have been 38 in FY21 and 30 in FY22. Parking tickets were up in FY22 with 5,909. Misdemeanor summonses were up from last year, 368, and warrant services were up for 641.
And we didn't track the some of the animal issues last year. That's why you see the 0 from last year.
Yeah, so for like animal dogs at large, we responded to 142, animal cruelty and abuse 6, animal complaints, miscellaneous, which should be a barking dog or anything related to that, be 138, and 28 animal bites that we responded to. Our detention orders, emergency custody and detention orders, we were down this year to 30, but we spent more time with the people, an average about 18 hours per individual. So that number went up in terms of hours, but the number of cases went down by 8 compared to last year. This is the Investigative Services Division quarterly. Gives you the stats across the board, and at the bottom it breaks it down by quarter. In the fourth quarter, we didn't see any significant increase in some of our cases. It actually looks like the numbers either were even or went down slightly. So total DSS referrals, we were at 24 for the year. Misdemeanor charges 31, felony charges 38, search warrants 72, abuse and neglect 15, and then internet crimes against children, we had 8 cases, fraud cases 12, which I talked that there was a significant increase in those. Burglaries were up, and runaway and missing childs were up, and then the special victim cases went up to 27. And then we've seen an increase in weapon violations. We've had several shootings in the city, so. This breaks it down for the Investigative Services Division in a graph. It actually shows comparison from FY21 to 22. We pretty much seen an increase, except, slight decrease in internet crimes against kids and abuse, felony abuse and neglect cases. We've seen a decrease in that, which is a good sign. Emergency Communication Center, they fielded 30,558 cases or calls for service. 27,000 of them were non-emergency, 2,700 of them were emergencies. So about 90%, almost 91% of the calls that came in were non-emergency. It breaks down some of that were, wire lines, wireless, or voice over the internet. The unknown is the ones that the system cannot determine where it came from. So that's why we see that. So about 10% of them were emergencies. And the average wait time for incoming calls was about 4 seconds. This breaks down for calls for service. So 68, almost 67% were from wireless phones. And then the next number that was the highest was the wired line, which is about 26%. Our training hours for the FY22, we sent one recruit to the academy. It was about 800 hours of training time for that individual to graduate. We do have a polygraph examiner now for the city. He's doing an internship right now, so he's got about another 3 months or so left of that. And we sent Captain Winston to the FBI Academy, and then the in-service training, we were about close to 4,000 hours of training for our officers. And all our staff, actually. So, yeah, it breaks it, and if the graph downstairs just breaks it at the bottom a little bit up. It shows you on a pie. These are parking violations. You can see we total about 6,000 parking citations were issued. Total paid for the year was about 977. We voided up about 600, about 170 contested, and 318 warnings were issued. Unpaid were 3,846. Our collection rate right now for FY22 is about 40. Compared to last year was about, 40%, which compared to last year was about 31%. So we're increasing a little bit on our collections. And this is our photo enforcement monitoring program. Gives you the numbers for the year starting in November. We reviewed 14,000 citations, rejected 3,500 of them, and we approved 10,598. Total fines would have been about $1 million, a little bit over $1 million. We collected 854,900. But this number changes daily now because we go back. If it was written at a certain time, the way we do it, we have to go back to the actual issue date. Unless, if it's prior years, then it goes in the existing year. And in the red light camera, we reviewed 6,682 of them, rejected 2,000. And approved 4,500 of them for total fines of 229,500. Total fines collected is about 140,000. Total fines due is about 89,000. And if anybody has any questions?
Comments or questions? Question? Yes.
Thanks. The reduction in the narcotics, is that due to change in law, or just people are not?
And that's part of it.
Okay.
But also, we were short-staffed, so our narcotics detective was had to be reassigned temporarily.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's back there full-time now.
Okay. Thanks.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, are we still looking for a parking enforcer?
We have one. We're going to actually offer her here in a couple weeks an offer letter, and she's very excited. So we should have somebody hopefully lined up in a couple weeks.
Oh, good.
Good news.
Yeah.
That's good news. Going back to the animal section here.
Yes.
Do we track animal bites? I see it was 0 in 2021.
We weren't tracking in 21. That was a comment that I made. You see a lot of zeros for all the animal-related ones. We weren't tracking that data then. We're tracking it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
wherever there's a zero, it was not tracked. I see. I thought it just wasn't that one category that was mentioned earlier, but it's all four. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. So I'll be presenting the FY22 performance review for year end for the Department of Parks and Recreation this evening. So wanted to kind of just point out one kind of anomaly here. Typically, when I do the performance reviews, whether it be the quarterly or the annual review, I'm just comparing year over year data for the previous fiscal year. So on this one, you'll see that there's a column for FY20. The reason for that, FY21 was, while we had 11 months out of the 12 that we were open and servicing the public kind of via our normal operation, it really wasn't truly a normal operation in most cases. A lot of our kind of our big revenue drivers, memberships, rentals for part of the year just due to the restrictions with capacity and so forth. Things like swim lessons and a lot of our programs where we just didn't open up or have a lot of our traditional rec service programs weren't really operating. And if they were, it was late into that fiscal year. But something like memberships, for instance, didn't operate at all until FY22. So we just felt it was probably more, I guess, it just made more sense to include a full fiscal year's worth of data kind of pre-pandemic. So we took FY20 and then the 3 months that were absent in 20 when the facility shut down for COVID, we took those 3 months worth of data from FY19 and included that information. So that's why you see the FY20 column there. So just looking at the numbers, starting with the marketing division, all of the categories we saw year-over-year increases in terms of our initial projections and what we ended up realizing at the end of the year. In particular, the email open rate and Facebook engagement metrics went up significantly. We've really been making a lot of progress with Facebook engagement, and then the email open rates just seems month after month, it just continually keeps going up. So that's definitely a positive, and we've continued to see that in the first couple of months of FY23. Going down to our operations division, you see the membership contract number. We did hit our modified, or we did exceed our modified total. We made those modifications on a couple of these. You'll see a line through the initial number. We made those modifications at the halfway point. And in that particular case, we didn't beat or exceed the 155. However, we did still come in slightly under the initial projection of 180, but still only 29 below the 207 number from FY20. Which again, I'm very happy with that number. I think that's the one area that I really anticipate us seeing the longest, requiring the longest time for us to get back to normal. Is going to be that membership metric. Just being closed for as long as we were, and all of the other membership options in the region or in the local community, it's going to take us a little bit of time to kind of build back that number. But we are making progress, and even through the first couple of months of 23, we've continued to see that kind of ascend, so I feel good about that. But you can see there, again, 207 to 178, we're getting close. In terms of rentals sold, really, this metric's probably been our most impressive of the whole bunch. 187, we expected 150, which was above FY20, and we still were able to kind of blow that number out of the water. Staff just continues to do an amazing job really promoting the facility, and providing excellent customer service and really, kind of drawing customers to come back and repeat with those rental sales. Rentals held, we came in just over 1,200, 1,253. That exceeded the projection of 900, but also was quite a bit above 2000 or FY20 of 959. So again, continue to kind of really build capacity in our rental spaces in the building. Wellness center volume was another metric that I was really pleased with. We basically almost doubled the projection number there, and we came in not too far below the FY20 total. Again, that's an area where we continue to see increased patronage. However, that is also going to be tied to the membership metric, right? Because a lot of their, members, they secure a membership for the purposes of using the wellness center. So the two kind of go hand in hand. Tours, again, up very strong compared to our projection, still a little bit below FY20. However, the tours converted to sale was quite a bit above FY20. So the tours that we're doing, we're converting those into, sales. Probably a lot of those are converted to rentals as opposed to in the past, maybe more were memberships, right? So we're seeing more bang for our buck in those transactions. Going to the rec services division, programs implemented. Again, this is an area where we continue to kind of just keep plugging away. There's going to be a little bit of a lag there. We're still struggling to find some instructors. We're also still seeing some apprehension with our school age and our adult programming in terms of just interest. When we are running classes, we're not close to meeting our capacities. So that's an area we're continuing to kind of push and try to promote and find ways to kind of creatively market and, advertise those programs. Senior passports, again, other than memberships, probably the metric that's going to be the most difficult to kind of rebound from pre-pandemic. Although, again, we're seeing very positive signs. We had initially kind of reduced our projection, and then we were able to just exceed it, the original, just by one. So that was encouraging, but again, still quite a bit off from the FY20 total that we were looking at. And then special events, pretty much back to pre-pandemic totals, and that'll continue to rise and go up as the downtown is built out and we continue to have a bigger presence down there. So going to the aquatics division, swim sessions, we exceeded by one the FY20 total, so that was great. Beat our projection at 220 very easily. That's an area where we've seen a lot of interest, and there's been a very, robust response to coming back to the pool. The lane rental hours, that particular metric's a little misleading, just because in FY21, we were the only facility in the region that was still open for business in terms of the pool. A lot of competing facilities had shut down their aquatic facilities, so we were able to attract those customers who normally were going to places like in Fairfax and Prince William County. So that's why the number is very high there, but then it kind of cooled off once you look at the FY22 actuals. But as you can see, the 22 number is still very competitive in comparison to the 20. So we're going in the right direction there. Then water park attendance, well above the 20 total. Again, great response from the community coming out to the water park this year. We saw big jumps in attendance as well as revenue there. Going to the parks division, the Signal Hill field rentals, that is down. The reason for that, one of our bigger renters, Northern Virginia Soccer Club, changed the way that they rent space. They used to just rent a large chunk of fields every day, a bunch of fields, ensuring that they had a field in case other fields in the region didn't pan out. A lot of times they didn't use all of that field space. Cost-wise, I think they've just decided to become a little more, judicious in their spending, and now they're just looking to rent field space that they know they will utilize. So therefore, that's why that number dropped. And you can even see in 20, it was even much higher than what we projected for 22. And then for Costello Park fields, kind of the opposite. We saw a big jump as a result of cricket. The second pitch has really panned out. We also had a youth cricket group who rented a tremendous amount of space for much of the year. They are not renting space now, so we are kind of anticipating a little bit of a drop for FY23 unless we're able to kind of secure another group there. But we really did, have we had a great turnout for cricket in 22. And then the Library Services Division, I won't go into too much detail here because Holly's about to give a presentation for the library, but you can see here every category exceeded projection. For me, the one that was probably the most impressive was the new library cards, still exceeding that projection over significantly over what we expected after having so many cards in FY21. That was very impressive. And then lastly, our financial metrics. We were able to exceed projections on our revenues for cash basis and at the water park as well, like I mentioned before. In both cases, we were able to come in well above what we expected. So we were very happy with the turnout on those two categories. Moving over to event highlights, just wanted to show a couple pictures and go over a couple of the events through the fiscal year. The spring yard sale, we maxed out spaces there. Caitlin continues to do a great job. There's a lot of interest in the spring and the fall yard sales. For the father-daughter dance, we had 30 attendees. We were very happy with that. That was actually one of our higher total attended events for that particular event. And then the Naylor Sign and Cemetery dedication. I know many of you were there that day. It was an incredible day. It was kind of a two-part. We had the sign dedication in the morning and in the afternoon, the cemetery dedication. Forgive me that number's an approximate. It might really be approximate. I felt like there were probably well more than that at the sign dedication. Maybe not quite as many at the cemetery, but it was a great event and just a neat thing. Just kind of FYI, the contractor for the fence did complete the work last week for the cemetery. It looks great, so we're very happy to have that now completed, and we've reached out to the family and submitted pictures, and they seem very pleased as well. And lastly, we had our, kind of going backwards here a little bit on these events, but the Easter egg hunt, 120 participants. The flashlight egg hunt, we do that the night before. That had 42. Looks like y'all's isn't catching up with mine. There we go, okay. And then the flashlight egg hunt, 42, and then our kite festival, which again, this has turned out to be one of our higher attended events. 300, sold 54 kites. It's one of those deals where you don't have to buy a kite from us, you can bring your own. And at this particular one, we actually had a local vendor from City of Manassas come in, and they sold kites as well. So it's kind of neat. We seem to kind of be gradually trying to kind of build out and make that event a little bit bigger and a little more complex in nature. So we'll continue to kind of roll with that. But all in all, a great event. That's all I have.
If I could just point out too that from a revenue standpoint, even though a lot of programs are beating now where we were pre-pandemic, the ones that are really stalling still and way behind where we were in the pandemic all have to do either with kids or seniors. So the senior revenues are down, and then extended care and preschool revenues are significantly down. So we think, of course, it's related to the pandemic, especially for seniors in terms of attendance to the different programs that we had. But also it could be potentially for care issues with, correlated with the shortage in labor force with some two-parent households, one parent deciding to work more remote, or people working remote then able to take care of kids, therefore less of a need for extended care. So we're seeing a dip in that, and we don't know when that's going to come back. But thankfully, we've exceeded the revenues in a lot of other areas as well to help offset some of those losses. But we just don't know when those other revenues will come back to where they were before.
Okay. Any questions for Jay?
Yeah, I just got a comment. Basically, like the schools, where if they have an event, or I think there was a City of Manassas Latino Festival, our own Latino Festival. Your staff out there have a booth, and they're passing out marketing materials. I want to say kudos to that, because the word of mouth, and that's how you get people inside the doors, and that's how we get people to see, hey, we have this beautiful facility, and let's utilize it. But I want to say good job on that, going out to the community in our region and just spreading the word. So continue doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you. Welcome, Holly.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. Can you guys hear me okay? No. Okay, how about now?
You can hold it.
Yeah, close to your mouth.
I feel like usually I'm short enough that that's not a thing. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So going through the annual report for the library. So our second year, it's obviously been a year. On August 4th is when we opened in 2020, so we've been open for just over 2 years now. And our second year was one of growth, service, and embracing the community and having them embrace us. Some of the things I'm going to touch on in the report, besides some numbers and statistics, are our grant funding that we received this year, expansion of our Spanish programming and collections, and in general, our other programs, community outreach, and partnerships. So going over some of our statistics, we had in the last year about 10,000 items that were borrowed. That is up from just under 8,000 the year before. 2,500 items, digital items were borrowed, which is up over double the amount. We had only about 1,000 the year before. Our card holders are up to 1,576, and that is readily climbing since we reopened and now are in this facility. Our open hours, we were open for about 2,300 over the last year. We had just over 12,000 people visit our little library location last fiscal year as well. For our programs, we had 68 children's programs, 90 adult and teen programs, with an attendance of 920 to our children's programs and 184 to our teen and adult programs. The previous year, we didn't break them out due to different requirements with virtual and and in-person programming requirements by the state. So the overall programs that we did the year before was 85 programs with 478 program attendance. So we well exceeded that number this last year. For our public computer usage, that's our laptops. We went down by about 100, but it's because we got more resources for people to use their own devices. A lot of our laptop use was for printing, and we actually got mobile printing so people could print from their own devices, which is why you'll see wireless sessions actually went up about 100 from the previous year. So we did see it remain about the same between the 2 years total. And then our website views went up about almost 20,000 views. For social media, we have had about 800 followers on Facebook at the time these numbers were taken, and 183 Instagram followers, and 300 YouTube subscribers, which has been great. We get a lot of random viewers on YouTube, which we did not expect being a little library, but it really grew over the time because of some of our programs that we were putting on the YouTube channel. So I mentioned the grant that we got. We received a sub-grant through the Library of Virginia, ARPA fundings through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The grant was $8,833. We did spend that on a couple of different projects. One of the main ones is for the Book Nook over at the community center to kind of extend services out there. It's a pop-up location that we will staff twice a month. We were staffing it about once a month last fiscal year. As we move forward, it will go up to twice a month. And then when we are not there, it's just open for the public to go and sit. There's books there that they can take and take home with them. They can return them if they want, but they can keep them if they want as well. They don't have to check them out. They're not library materials. They're just there for people to enjoy.
And besides the grant, I just kind of want to remind everyone that when we made the decision to move from Prince William County to library system to our own library system, we didn't know how much money we were going to get from the state on an annual basis. We projected around 30,000, ended up being over 70,000, and now it's up to over 140,000. So when you look at how much we're spending, you got to subtract that much as well, which brings us down to what we were spending before with the county. But that's assuming the county wasn't going to increase their costs over the last few years. So we're getting much more service at the same price that we were getting before, and much increased service level with our own library in our downtown. In addition to the grants also that we're also pulling in that we wouldn't have been able to pull in if we didn't have our own library.
Some of the other resources that we used to the grant money for is to kick off some of our diverse programs and collections, specifically Spanish related. So we did use it to kind of get a good chunk before we even, our opening day collection where we got a lot more. But initially last fiscal year to get a good chunk of Spanish materials to help bring in more of the community and support more of the community. We also used it to kickstart a Spanish story time that will resume this month, actually, because we are now in October, on Saturdays going forward, but it is put on by or hosted by a local professional Spanish storyteller, Miss Roxana.
What's the age?
The age, it's 0 to 6 for the story time. And she brings her own following as well, so we do see an increased number of our patrons just based off of the following that she brings as well. She does story times for a lot of local libraries. Additionally, besides the couple things I mentioned with that grant money, we also helped or used it to help expand some of our regular programming. So at the old location, we didn't have a room with a projector, so we purchased a projector to extend the services and programs that we could do, as well as a green screen and video camera to help teach teens especially, but all ages, kind of the basics in video editing. And that's already been a hit here at the new library as well. So some of the programs that we have done over the course of the last year are summer reading. Back in 2021, our first summer reading was very well attended, many of our programs. In terms of actually registered participants, we had 19 adults, 25 children and teens, and 41 early readers, which was anyone under the age of 7. We did have a decent number of those complete the program as well, but even more of those came back and gave us some feedback on how to better do our summer reading program, which we then took for this last summer reading. So those numbers I am very excited to present next year as we run them because they have increased. We also did many author talks, and that's probably one of the reasons that we had so many YouTube subscribers, as we did put many of our author talks on our YouTube channel, and so we brought in their audience as well. Melissa Face, Morgan Vega, Maya Mirnak, Andre Gatling, who is pictured here, and Christian Cantrell were the 5 that we did the last fiscal year. A couple of them were repeats, and some of them have asked if they can come back because they received very good positive feedback. Probably our most popular event is our monthly Craft and Create program, which we still do, where we would have some type of program that's or craft good for all ages, and people would come in with their families typically, but even just swinging by the library for something else, they would come and create their own program or their own craft. So the ones that are pictured here is a windsock in the bags, but also a create your own snowflake that we had over last winter. The bags pictured on the right are actually our craft grab and go bags. What we were doing during the pandemic is after the craft and create, we made little craft grab and go bags for anyone who didn't feel comfortable coming to the library for these programs, and they were very popular. We also did Spook Fest, which we will be doing this year as well at the end of the month. And it's a Halloween program that has a bunch of attendees coming in costume for costume contests, but also to learn and explore different STEAM activities, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math. The event that is pictured here was our Expanding Ghosts, so that kids could explore chemical reactions that happen when you mix baking soda and vinegar, and the ghost pops up as the carbon dioxide is released. Some of the outreaches and partnerships that we completed over the last year. Obviously, our main one was at the Manassas Park Community Center, doing our pop-up locations, just trying to increase our awareness in the community and bringing the services to that side of the community as well. In addition to those ones, though, we also spoke often with the city schools. We weren't able to get into the schools due to COVID restrictions until pretty late in the year, but we did get in to talk to some of the classes at the middle school at the end of the school year last year, and just at that event I talked to 93 students. So we are starting to reach out to them more and have plans to go into the schools as we're able to over the course of this year as well. We also partnered with the Virginia Department of Health to bring COVID kits to seniors during the kit shortage. We partnered with some homeschooling organizations, both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scout troops in the area. The Library of Virginia, of course, for some programs, as well as the variety of digital resources that we offer through them. We did some mental health programs as well with our coordinator, and we partnered with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission for the Ukraine refugee drive as well. So those are just some of the outreaches and partnerships that we participated in. We also, one of our biggest ones is the Chalk Festival that we did with MPCC. We had over 100 attendees at that at Blooms Park for Kids Day at the Park, I believe, was the actual event that the Chalk Festival was for. And we had the kids both creating the designs in Blooms Park, which was the MPC side, and then at the library we had a bunch of options for people to create their own nature-themed crafts in general. So we had birdhouses, we had little figurines of animals, and a variety of other things for kids to create and draw and color. So what's next as we move forward? As I mentioned before, we have the Book Nook over at the Community Center, but we also have obviously our new building here, Park Central Library. We have adjusted slightly our logo and colors to match more the building and the way that the city rebranded. We wanted to fall in line, and so we have changed our colors as well to reflect. Some of our opening day statistics I also wanted to share with you guys. So we were open for 6 hours on September 11th. We had 368 items checked out. There was a scavenger hunt going on in the library. 124 people participated and turned in their sheets. There was probably more that didn't turn in their sheets. We had 521 visitors that day, and the stat that I am most impressed with is we created 113 cards just that day, which is more than double what we used to make in a month at the old location. So very happy for those numbers. We just got this week, 2 days ago, I just got the official pictures for the opening day, which I'll be posting online to social media soon. But I have a couple of pictures that staff took throughout the day, just up here to kind of show you a little bit of what happened if you weren't able to swing by on opening day. And then, so thank you to my advisory board, city leadership, of course, my staff members, and of course our patrons.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
We are very proud of our new library.
Thank you.
Very. Comments or questions from the governing body? Yes.
Hi, do you measure, I guess, when people take out the books, are they returning them on time, or?
We don't quite measure them, but we do, so we have automatic renewals, 3 of them. So
Yeah.
if you check out something, it will automatically renew 3 times. And then after a while, after that 3rd renewal, and I don't remember the exact amount of time, we send them notices. And then after 3 notices, it does go into a loss section so that we can see then that they haven't returned. But until it gets to that point, we don't really run those numbers, though I could get them.
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
Thank you. Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
A quick question regarding increasing the number of cardholders. What are the plans in the coming months?
Yeah, so doing some library card drives throughout the city as well as at the schools to get cards into students' hands, but also popping up throughout the city at various events. We're going to be this Saturday, a staff member is going to be at the fire open house as well to create cards there. And a couple of the other events coming up, I'm spacing on what those are, we'll have table at as well to promote those. Sending home flyers with the students is another big way that we have currently planned, but if you ever have any ideas, I'm definitely open to hearing some.
Yeah, not at the moment, but I'm also brain dead at the moment, so give me time. I could probably come up with something.
All right.
And we are starting the next week with and I think this is more J, where the senior citizens can call the number.
Yes.
And come and visit the.
Yeah, starting the 12th, right, 12th? Yes. Yeah. And we are working, so we planned so far in advance, we already had our programming planned through the end of November before that was decided. But after November, we will be shifting our programs geared towards adults and seniors to the same day to match that. And in the between now and when that change will happen, I have tasked my programming staff, but also my other staff, to kind of pick the brains of those seniors that are coming to see what they want so that we can gear our services better towards those who will be coming in and hopefully help bring in even more.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, thank you.
That's all I have. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
So
Do you have a follow-up? Okay.
if I could just make a comment too. So think of this as kind of a 5-phase approach, right? For library growth, step 1 was get the neighborhood library up and running in Blooms. That's going to have kind of a base level of participation. And as I said before, when we get to the downtown, you're going to see that increase. And that's what happened, even without any businesses, which is phase 2. Just open a bigger library in the downtown, more centrally located, do the extensive outreach that we're doing with the Book Nook. You're going to see a boost there. Step 3, when our businesses open, right? Girani's, La Finca, that's going to bring more people here as well, especially Girani's that are going to have their own clientele that then can come to the library. And so we hope to see a boost there and people attending our library. Step 4 is going to be when the downtown is completed. That means the theater's in place as well and all the businesses are in place. You're going to have a boost then. And then step 5 is when the town center is fully successful. Because even when you have your anchor, you have all the businesses in place, it usually takes 2-3 years after that for the town center to really grow and reach its peak. So we expect to see growth in library participation with each of those phases, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Comments comments or questions? No? Thank you very much, Holly.
Thank you.
Okay. City Manager, do you have anything more to
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Dean, would you like to read us into closed session?
Yes, I would. City Attorney recommends the governing body go into closed meeting to consult with the city attorney regarding the terms of a proposed agreement with Prince William County for the city to join a new health department pursuant to paragraph 8 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We're in closed session.